I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're about ready to get started, so if we can make our way to the chairs. I know there still is some out there getting some of the food, but we're going to get started here. And the first thing we're going to do is open up with a blessing, and we asked from the local tribe, Gabrieno people, we could share one of our Serrano Bighorn sheep songs here. And it's land acknowledgement for the people here of this area that we're in, Downey, for the Gabrieno people. So let's give them a round of applause there. And this is land acknowledgement, but it's also a prayer. So we could stand accordingly, if that's okay with you. But also, before we open up with the prayer, we do want to send our condolences to the LA County Sheriff's Department for the fallen deputy, Deputy Ryan Klinkenbroomer. As we sing this song, he will be in our thoughts and prayers. Patanaiva, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam, Patanaiva, ayam. Thank you so much for the honor to be able to sing traditional song and honor the people, Gabrieno people, whose land we're on here today, and also condolences to our fallen deputy, to our law enforcement community. Thank you so much. We're able to be here today because of the warmth and welcoming from the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And without that warmth and opening, we wouldn't be able to be here to talk about a situation that's been plaguing Indian country for many years. But now we have tools, and the legislators that are here on this dais will say a few words down the road a little bit. But right now, we want to offer the mic to the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Deborah Dorado from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and thank her for the warm welcoming for us to be here today.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Ramos. Welcome to all of you, to all of our legislators, to all of the community. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to come together and address such an important issue. This is a moment where we need to make sure that there is an awareness and information and a clear plan for implementation to make sure that people are aware of the feather alert and what it means. You coming together to address AB 1314 to make people aware of the heart-wrenching pain that is caused when someone goes missing in their community, especially when they're overly represented as Native Americans, especially women and girls. I also want to introduce our student board member who's standing here today, Jimena Mendez. Jimena, say there's a Jimena who's came on her own heard about this and said we need to make sure that our youth are aware and that we continue to engage. So this is definitely a crisis that we need to address. And the only way that we're going to be able to address it is by coming together, hearing from our leaders, hearing from the family members who have experienced this loss. And my condolences to anyone here today who has experienced that pain and loss of losing a loved one and having them found missing. My prayers to you, my acknowledgement to you, because there's nothing more painful than that. So again, welcome to LACO. We're here to support you in whatever way we can, and we're here with gratitude and appreciation to the leaders that are making this possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much again for your hospitality for us to be able to be here and get this much important information out into the community. We also want to acknowledge the host legislators here that have also opened up their districts for us to be able to be here as the California Native American Legislative Caucus. We want to give opening remarks to Senator Archuleta.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Downey, welcome to Southern California, and welcome to this sacred land that I think all of us are so grateful that we've taken this step to come together and recognize Assembly Bill 1314, the feather alert implementation. And people don't realize that when a missing child or a woman or anyone is lost from the family, kidnapped, that the family crisis, it falls apart. But now that we're able to work with the California Highway Patrol, Caltrans, law enforcement in general, getting this word out, that when you, all of us, see that alert, it means that someone, a Native American, female, someone in the family has been stolen, kidnapped, and we need your input to pick up that telephone and identify that car, look for that car, and let us know what is happening. So today I'd like to again thank the City of Downey for coming this together, the Department of Education here in the County of Los Angeles, but more importantly, Assemblymember Ramos for bringing this together, because all of us that are here, all the legislators that are here, are coming to support you. And this great state of California is not going to let any child go unfound, and we're going to do everything we can to locate and bring them back to their family. So once again, thank you all for coming, and of course, Assembly Member, congratulations for this great number of people that are here. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator Archuleta, for your hospitality. Next, also from the Assembly in the district that we reside in, Assembly Member Blanca Pacheco.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today here in the City of Downey. It's such an honor to host all of you this evening. This is the city that I represent on the Assembly, and also the city in which I served on the City Council. And it's impressive to see all of you here. This is important. It's an important topic, and I just want to thank Assemblymember Ramos for being such a champion for Native Americans and for this bill. This is an important bill, and so I want to thank you for your leadership and all that you're doing in the State Assembly. And again, thank you so much for being here, and wish everyone a good evening.
Thank you so much for your hospitality, inviting us into your district. We also have with us other members from the Assembly. Assembly Member Pilar Chiavo, Assembly Member Luz Rivas, Speaker Anthony Rendon, and Juan Carrillo, Assembly Member. Does anybody wish to say a few words? Assembly Member Luz Rivas.
Thank you, Assemblymember Ramos, and everyone here in LACO and leadership. I want to start off by thanking Assemblymember Ramos for inviting me to participate today. And I was a co-author of AB 1314, and ever since it was signed into law, I've been looking forward to the implementation. So I'm glad to be here to learn more about how it's going and to get an update. I want to also acknowledge the Fernandeño Tataviam. I represent them in the city of San Fernando. Leadership is here. But looking forward to hearing from everyone about the Feather Alert. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any others on the dais? Speaker Rendon?
Sure, thank you. I'll speak because I'm a little too close to my district today, so I have to run out and attend a couple of other events. But I just wanted to first thank LACO as somebody who ran early childhood education organizations for 20 years. I used to come here once a year hoping to get our funding renewed, and it always ended up okay. So thank you for LACO for all the hard work you do and for hosting us tonight. When I walked in the room today, I hadn't seen my colleagues for a couple of weeks because we're out of session, but it's interesting to note these colleagues because these are colleagues who are no strangers to the Native American Caucus and to Native American issues. When we have events in Sacramento, when we have events in the Capitol, it's always these members who are there. So these are people who are committed year-round to these events, and I want to thank them for being here as well. And obviously, I want to thank James Ramos, our Rules Chair and the Chair of the Native American Caucus. I talked recently in a speech about the going away present that Jerry Brown gave me when he left the governor's mansion. It was a book called American Genocide about the atrocities, particularly against Northern California and Southern Oregon tribes that had happened in the late 19th century. And I would read that book every day in my office, and then I'd walk out onto the floor and read in the back of the chambers. And after a while, it occurred to me that the decisions that were made in that book that led to genocide, that led to atrocities, were made by people who were sitting in those very chairs, the chairs that we sit in on a daily basis. It matters who sits in those chairs. It matters who sits there, and it matters the perspectives they have, and it matters in terms of their life experiences. To have these colleagues sit in those chairs and make the decisions that we make today fills me with a tremendous amount of comfort. But to have someone like James Ramos there, to have someone with his history, to have someone with his sense of history and his understanding of all of these issues, not only from a historical perspective, but if you think about this particular bill and this particular issue, this is not about history. This is stuff that's about atrocities and tragedies that are happening today. So I want to thank our chair for all the work that he does, a tireless effort on behalf of all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Juan Carrillo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by saying thank you, Mr. Chair, for putting this group together. It's been a pleasure serving with you. As one of the new members coming into the Assembly, I noticed right away the leadership that you had and the way that you have brought up to this attention to the things that need to be addressed in this issue. But I also want to thank you for offering the condolences to the LA County Sheriff's Deputy who was brutally assassinated, Deputy Kleckenbrummer. I live in Palmdale. I represent the city of Palmdale, and the sheriff deputy was assassinated right outside of the sheriff station in Palmdale. Thank you for recognizing that and for that. I'm here to learn from all of you, to listen to your experiences, and to see how we can collectively work on addressing those issues. We know that it's been well established that Native people, especially Native women, are disproportionately more likely to experience violence in their lifetimes. And for that reason, I'm here and I'm willing to put everything that I can to support those efforts to make sure that these things don't happen anymore. And for those that have experienced this, making sure that we have the resources to unite the families together. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Pilar Chiavo?
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I really look forward to hearing from folks and hearing the stories, which I think is really are the things that inform us the most when we're making policies in Sacramento. And those are the things that stick with me the most when I'm thinking about the bills that are before us and why they're so important to move forward, like the one that created the Feather Alert. And so, I'm really grateful for the leadership of Assemblymember Ramos and the work of the whole caucus, the Native American caucus, to really move forward issues facing the Native American community. My first job out of college was working for a tribe in Oregon, and like Speaker Emeritus Brendan mentioned, those are the things that really inform our work and make a difference when we're in those chairs that were holding people who are making horrible choices in the past. And there's a lot of work to do to make sure that we change that, and a lot of heartbreak and tragedy that continues to happen that we need to continue to make good. So as a mother, I can't imagine the pain that folks have gone through, and just want to do whatever I can to make sure that we are helping folks and really bringing light to this issue as much as we can. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that, and thank you, Speaker Emeritus. But also, our current speaker, Speaker Rivas, is one that's been side by side with us on a lot of these issues facing California's first people and the nation's first people. Feather Alert, he was also a co-author on this bill, as well as those on the dais, and our current speaker, Speaker Rivas, is also a co-author on AB 44 that would allow tribal governments to access CLETs. So we wanted to make sure that we highlight that we do have the support of our speaker, that we're here today. Our prior speaker, Speaker Emeritus, under his leadership, created and allowed us to move forward in creating the first in the history of the state of California, the California Native American Legislative Caucus, which each member here is part of. So let's give them all a round of applause there. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight to discuss an important new tool in fighting the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Indian country and Indigenous persons. California has the greatest number of Native American residents in the country, with over 700,000 tribal citizens on record residing here in the state of California. We have a great number of our people, like me, who live on reservations, Indian reservations. However, one of the stereotypes that we have to break is that all Indian people live on federal Indian reservations, when we know that more than 70% of California's Native American population lives in urban areas. And also, almost of the 700,000 that have been counted in the state of California, close to 50% of those reside in LA County alone. Although we continue to move forward, there are currently 327,000 plus Native Americans living in LA County. It has the greatest number of Native Americans in the state and the greatest number in any county in the United States, according to the LA Native American Indian Commission. This is the fourth Feather Alert that we have had throughout the state. We've had one up in Fresno. We have one over in Saboba Reservation. We've also had one in San Bernardino County, and now we're having one in LA County. And the purpose is to educate tribal communities, law enforcement, about a tool that's available to them now. 4 short months ago, in May of this year, after the Feather Alert's inception, in January, a tribal citizen was reported missing and was found alive and safe. The missing woman was returned to her home and to the family safely, and that was due in part to the Feather Alert that was issued up in Ukiah area. So we know that it truly does work. We know also that there still needs to be a lot of work moving forward. AB 1314 created a Feather Alert system to notify the public and media in a timely fashion when a person is missing. It is similar to other notification operations that the California Highway Patrol oversees. Creating a notification alert was a top recommendation of tribal leaders and advocates from hearings that we had in the state legislature in Sacramento. AB 1314, which created this alert system, was signed into law by Governor Newsom and now is in effect. Now we need to get the word out and make sure that those tools are being used. The rates of murdered and missing people in Native American communities is a shameful state and national tragedy. It does not receive the scrutiny and attention that it deserves. Growing up on the San Manuel Indian Reservation, missing and murdered indigenous women, indigenous persons from reservations is nothing new to us. It has been going on for generations. What is new is that finally we're getting the advocacy from those around us to work together as a community and as a state to bring attention to this issue and to bring forth laws that be more proactive in bringing our people home safely. That's the change. Currently in front of you, you heard from the members on this dais, we have a diverse legislature that's willing to tackle and stand side by side with California's first people and the nation's first people. And that's what the Feather Alert starts to move forward in and other pieces of legislation that we're dealing with. California has the 5th highest cases of all states in the nation. And a study funded by the National Institute of Justice found that 84% of indigenous women will experience violence in their lifetime compared to the high rates of their counterparts at 71%. Let me say that again. To the average person in the nation of 71% of the women, and now with Native American women, 84% will face something in their lives. We have to come together as a community and start to be more proactive in creating these laws and bringing awareness out, because it's unacceptable that 1 in 3 Native American women will have been sexually assaulted or stalked in her lifetime. Out of that group, 50% of the assaulted or stalked will be assaulted more than once and multiple times. It's time that we come together as a state, as a community, and a nation to make sure that people understand that those statistics are unacceptable anywhere and should be unacceptable here in LA County, the state of California, and the nation of the United States. These numbers, compared to reality, when the absence of Native American statistics are perceived as statistically insignificant because it's a lower population than others, sometimes the data classification gets lost. According to the LA Native American Commission, as like most of the U.S., the county data on our American Indian Alaska Native population and Hawaiian is not collected consistently or appropriately, and we tend to be left out of most data sets because we are noted as statistically insignificant. It's time that we all come together as original peoples. We will soon hear from our panelists and engage in a discussion on how we can continue to work together, saving the lives and families of countless Native American families who are impacted by the missing and murdered indigenous persons crisis that continues to plague not only Native Americans, but also Native Hawaiians. We will also hear from expert law enforcement and tribal law enforcement and discuss additional ways to support our efforts. One of these additional items and bills moved through the legislature with the support of my colleagues here on this dais, AB 44, and it deals with a time of Public Law 280 when jurisdiction was asserted over tribal lands, but yet no funding came forward for public safety. AB 44, for the first time in the state's history, once signed by the governor, will allow CLET's database to be accessed by tribal governments that so choose to. It's time that we truly understand who's entering our Indian reservations, who's coming around us, so we know and we could be more proactive to ensure our loved ones are not harmed and that the statistics do not continue to climb. As we continue to do work, we are continually finding and breaking down the barriers that have limited law enforcement of all jurisdictions' success in solving missing and murdered Indigenous persons, Indigenous women cases in the state of California. By making all communities safer and not leaving out the communities of California's first people and the nation's first people, we can achieve this. But it takes all of us to come together and stand side by side, to let our voices be heard, that the statistics that we just read are unacceptable in LA County, unacceptable in the state of California, and unacceptable in the United States of America and in the Hawaiian Islands. Today, we have with us a person who gives firsthand knowledge of this issue that we talk about. When we speak about the feather alert that was born from the epidemic that is missing and murdered Indigenous people, and especially women and children, those that are living it firsthand, we will hear from Tracy Molina today, joining us with her testimony.
Thank you for having me here. My name's Tracy Molina. Am I talking loud enough for you?
Yeah, did you push the button?
I'm from Siletz, Oregon. Siletz is a reservation in Central Oregon, but also includes tribes from Northern California. I'm a member of the Yakima Warriors Association and a member of the Native American Church of Siletz. That's where I grew up, but I also worked as a social worker lived on the Yakima Reservation and worked as a social worker there for 20 years. So I'm here just to tell you what it was like for us. To go through this process. I'm here to talk about my niece, Delight Atterbury, who's enrolled in the Siletz tribes and is Chetco, Sixes, and Shasta Costa tribes within that confederacy. But she's also Karuk from her dad's side, which is in Northern California. She went missing about 3 years ago, and we didn't start to work hard to start working harder on her case. It was very difficult because of the miscommunication between the family and law enforcement, and not understanding exactly what the process was to report someone missing, and all the things that need to be done in order for that to happen. And so I think it would be really good if I had a wish list. It would be to have a cultural liaison person that could help the family communicate with law enforcement, because we're talking about different cultures. It's hard enough when we're from the same culture to communicate, but when we're from different cultures, it makes it even more difficult. And adding the layer of having someone missing or murdered makes it, adds pressure to that relationship. I think that there should be because we got the runaround, like the law enforcement down here would say we have to file a missing persons report up where we live, and then we would try to do that, and they would tell us to go back. There was a lot of that not really understanding of what needs to be done. So it would be great if there was ever a website that says if your loved one is missing, these are the steps that you need to take, and clear, easy steps, and then that way no one has to learn the process over and over again. Each family has to learn that process over and over again. So I sent an email to Assemblyman Ramos's office, and a lot of other people. I wrote to a lot of people. We wanted to find her. We wanted her to come home, and he was the only one who responded out of everyone. And I'm happy to say that we found her a month ago. She had to spend some time in the hospital recovering from a brain injury, but she is home now. Just got home last week. So it's been like a miracle for us. And this issue is so deep in our communities. I saw it over and over again. As a social worker on the reservation, I saw it over and over and over again. And then I saw it in my own family. Is why while my niece was missing, my Yakima aunt's baby sister went missing in 1987, and bones were found on the reservation in 2008. But it wasn't until January of this year, 2023, that we got the official notice that that is her, and that she was able to be buried that way. And so I just wanted to read what her sister said about that process. Her sister is Patricia Whitefoot. She was appointed by President Obama to be part of the Indian Education Advisory Board. Well, before I say that, I just wanted to share that there's even though these two families are part of my family, they don't know each other, but they have a lot of commonalities. And one is that like Delight's aunt was the one who got their tribe restored. Their tribe was terminated in the 1950s and got restored in the late 1970s. And so her aunt, Pauline Ricks, went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied to get the tribe back. Because once your tribe was terminated in the 1950s, it was a U.S. policy to terminate tribes. They were no longer legally allowed to call themselves Native American, and no longer legally allowed to get IHS services or anything like that. And I see the same leadership in my other side of my family, the Tallman only family. That their relatives are leaders, spiritual leaders in our communities. The Yakima people still have are one of the only tribes that still have their own religion. It's still established, still very strong, and their family are leaders in that too. And they teach both sides of the family. They are the teachers of the songs and the dances and the stories. So they're from very traditional families, and so speaking to law enforcement I think it's more difficult, in my opinion, from what I've seen as a social worker and as a family member, for the communication between law enforcement, because there's just too many easy ways. If you don't know another culture, there's too many easy ways to make like violations in their culture that you don't mean to make, but because you don't know the rules or the traditions, then you make those mistakes. So it's another reason why I think that, because right now mostly it's just activists that help families try to be a liaison. But it would be nice if there was someone who understood, law enforcement culture and indigenous culture at the same time, and that they could so that they could work together stronger, bring more people home and identify, advocate for families to help identify bodies sooner, so they don't have to wait 30, 40 years to find out, that was my loved one. And so the main point that the family wanted to share was that, that to think of the missing and the murdered people, indigenous people, as not as statistics, but as real living people that are loved by their families, and they're not. It doesn't matter what kind of, it doesn't matter how successful or how educated your family is. We're at risk. We're all at risk for this to happen. And sometimes people have difficulties dealing with all the traumas that we face, and it compounds the issue and makes it harder to come out of. But yeah, I just wanted to, thank you, Assemblyman Ramos, for responding to us, for helping us, and also giving us a voice here today, so that maybe something we say or share today can help another family in the future. So, I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the willingness to share that testimony and to the testament that there still needs to be a lot more work to be done. Breaking barriers, tribal liaisons, those things that still need to be worked on for our members to hear and members of the community. We're going to move into our first panel, where we have on the first panel Dr. Jolie Proudfit, representing California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, Council Member at Large Shannon Wingfield from the Guareño Band of Mission Indians, Chairman Rudy Ortega from the Fernandino Tataviatam Band of Mission Indians, Chairperson Anthony Morales from the Gabrieno Band of Mission Indians, Executive Director Keely Minton from Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indians, Strong-Hearted Native Women's Coalition, Executive Director Elaine Norrie from the Sohi Sinal Sisters Project. We also have with us Saboba Tribal Chairman Isaiah Vivanco and the Morongo Tribal Government Chairman Charles Martin. We'll start with Dr. Jolie Proudfit.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos and esteemed colleagues. Miyam Nutong Dr. Jolie Proudfit, Yakalo Senyo Pankowicham, and Tongva. And let me also greet you in the Tongva language. Miyaha Netwanyan Jolie Proudfit, and a special greeting to the Honorable Chairman Morales of the San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians. Thank you for hosting this today. Thank you, Assembly Ramos, esteemed leaders, honored guests, our valiant first responders, and the cherished families who gather here today. Patsy Whitefit and I serve on NACI together. She's an auntie to me. It's always good to find relatives. In the autumn of 2020, I stood side by side with the vigilant women of our Southern California Native community. Our alarm bells rang out when two of our young teenage kin vanished from their off-reservation home near their tribal reservation. The urgency of the situation was clear to us, yet our desperate calls for action seemed to fall on deaf ears by local law enforcement. These girls were hastily labeled as mere runaways rather than potential victims of foul play. Despite the weight of alarming statistics indicating the vulnerability of our Indigenous women, our pleas remained largely ignored. We leveraged all of our political and personal connections to shine a light on this issue. It was this harrowing experience that drove me to pursue an appointment onto the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Appointed by Governor Newsom in 2021, I became the first Indigenous woman on the commission, passionately advocating alongside determined women for the betterment of all females in California. Together, we sought to shine a light on those hidden in the shadows, marginalized by colonization, or rendered invisible due to the lack of federal recognition. The realities faced by our Indigenous communities in California are stark. The disproportionate numbers of Indigenous individuals going missing, vulnerability amplified for tribes without federal recognition. Indigenous communities off-reservation are frequently overlooked and underserved. In today's digital era, Indigenous families grapple with the complex landscape of social media. Without adequate guidance and education, these platforms can become tools in the hands of malicious actors, preying on our vulnerable young minds. As the mother of a 12-year-old daughter, this intricate web of social media and its potential dangers weigh heavily on my heart, often leaving me restless at night. This was not the only reason why I sought the appointment. When I was 8 years old in 1977, living in Culver City, my best friend was kidnapped and killed by a serial killer. Merle Hondo Chance was his name. And that evening, he didn't come home, and law enforcement knocked on our door. As his best friend, I had to sit in the back seat with law enforcement and drive around Culver City, Marina Del Rey, to tell all the places that we played. Not knowing what happened to Hondo, several months later, his Bones were discovered in the Los Angeles National Forest. He was murdered as the last victim by the LA freeway killer. So you can imagine how I treat my daughter when she wants to walk across the street to go to the neighbor's house. The issue of missing is a serious one, but to remember the quick reaction when my blonde-haired, blue-eyed friend went missing, to when our young girls, our women, our Native community members go missing. It's not the same reaction. Therefore, I'm committed to leveraging every resource, particularly education, to ensure that Indigenous women, girls, and especially our youth are empowered with the knowledge they need. By equipping them with the right tools, I aim to fortify their self-determination and resilience, safeguarding them from potentially dangerous situations and nefarious individuals. Addressing the lifestyle challenges faced by numerous Indigenous community members should not diminish our urgency in locating them. I am tired of hearing about they made bad lifestyle choices. We must refrain from attributing blame to victims based on their lifestyle choices. While there are lifestyle challenges in many Indigenous communities, it should not lessen our resolve to finding missing members promptly. In situations where a member of our community goes missing, we now have the invaluable Feather Alert system as a resource to assist in ensuring their safe return home. Today, thanks to AB 1314, a ray of hope shines brightly for all of us. Ensuring immediate action for the disappearance of Indigenous persons is crucial. The Feather Alert will streamline resources at local, tribal, and state levels. It ensures that missing individuals aren't lost in the fray. Furthermore, the Feather Alert seeks to acknowledge and bring visibility to our non-federally recognized tribal relatives in California. You heard from Chairman Ramos how many Native Americans live in Los Angeles County alone, providing a protective umbrella for those outside federal safety nets, raising awareness of the hurdles these communities face, and guaranteeing they remain front and center, especially in times of adversity. Our mission doesn't stop there. We aim to bridge the gap between reservations and urban hubs, emphasizing the importance of safeguarding every Indigenous individual and ensuring swift information dissemination in populated areas. Many of you may be away from your tribal homelands, but not your relatives. We are all related. Our approach is one of unity. We urge law enforcement to join hands with American Indian community leaders, advocates, and tribal elected officials to foster stronger cooperation between all governing entities. Acknowledge the indispensable value of tribal culture, wisdom, and traditions. Maximize resources in the quest to locate the missing. A tangible way we can collectively collaborate with law enforcement is by working together. As the director of the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center, we have provided a peace officer standards training post-certified PL-280 course for almost a decade. Following the shootouts at Saboba, where I had to personally train and educate sheriff's officer and law enforcement, something good came out of these trainings is that we offered post-certified. And those of you who are law enforcement in the room know that if it's not post-certified, it's not worth your time. And so because of something that happened decades ago, we were able to offer this training, this course, and I have flyers here, so anyone who wants the training, just call us. It's a 2-day training. This course, offered in various PL-280 affected states, demystifies unique jurisdictional challenges in California. I urge first responders, state agencies, and law enforcement to engage in this vital training, enhancing our collective knowledge and efficacy. I invite you to take one of these flyers for the post-certified 280 course and invite us to your home communities, to your law enforcement agencies, to your tribal reservations. We have offered countless trainings all over the U.S. offered by our amazing trainers like retired Riverside County Sheriff Officer Alex Torres, a member of the Torres Martinez tribe, his partner, retired Officer Cindy Pierce. We recently added to our training team Olin Jones, former Director of Native American Affairs, at the California Department of Justice, and Val Wilson, who spent years with the California Commission on the Post Officer Standards and Training. To all of you legislators, what would really be helpful is mandating these 2 days of training. We have been doing it for about $200 a person, and you get the book. It's literally called PL 280 for Dummies, and it has cartoon images. Come on now. How easy can that be, right? And we will deliver it anywhere. All of our Southern California reservations, if not all of them, most of them have opened up their doors and allow that training to happen. Everyone deserves this knowledge, and we all do better when we know better, to quote the great Maya Angelou. Remarkably, we offer this for a mere $200 or less, which includes the book. It's a cost-effective way to acquire knowledge that has the potential to save lives. In essence, the Feather Alert emerges as a beacon reminiscent of the rising sun over this great state, heralding a brighter, safer tomorrow. It signifies our collective strides towards justice, emphasizing the intrinsic value of Indigenous life. It is a clarion call to every Californian to stand vigilant and protective. Let us spread the word about the Feather Alert, educate our communities about this paramount importance, and in unity work towards a more secure California. Let us unite in solidarity and purpose, forging an unbreakable alliance between individuals and law enforcement agencies. Together we have the power to be the shield for our Indigenous brothers and sisters, ensuring that not one more goes missing. With every shared alert, every moment of vigilance, and every hand extended in collaboration, we are the guardians of their safety, the voice for the voiceless, and the beacon of hope lighting their way home. Stand with us, act together. Let's write a new chapter of protection, respect, and justice for all Indigenous lives in California.
Thank you so much for that testimony. Next, we're going to hear from the Morongo Tribal Chairman Charles Martin.
It's an honor to be here, sitting before the legislators. We want to thank you, Chairman Ramos. I think what really stands out about what is being said here today is that it took one of our own to become a legislator, so to finally address this issue, AB 1314, the Feather Alert. Again, as some of the folks were here saying, we could contact, local law enforcement, but they would say they don't have jurisdiction on the reservation, and it would just get passed around. Without your leadership, this issue probably would have never been addressed, and we wouldn't be having this dialogue to further, share with each other and on the things that need to transpire so that the system does work. Again, I'm so appreciative to the members of my tribe, because we do have individuals that do go missing, are subject to violence, and when you have members that are not Native American, they live on our communities, and not that the sheriff didn't come in and prosecute them. But one of the things that is kind of strange about this law is Public Law 280, is that non-members were not, it was stated that they were not prosecuted because they were not tribal members on a federally recognized Indian reservation. So again, these are things that are being addressed now, and 2 steps forward, and I hope we can continue the momentum and continue to work through the Feather Alert system, and there will be no more Indigenous murdered or missing children, and that because we do have somebody to contact now, we're not hopeless, because before we were hopeless. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for those comments. Next, we're going to hear from Council Member at Large Shannon Wingfield from the Guareño Band of Mission Indians.
Thank you. Miyu Yam Notang Moyila Pashwa Yaka. Hello, I am Moon Otter, Shannon Wingfield. I'm representing the Guareño Band of Mission Indians of Hashima Nation, so thank you for having me. As others tonight, I'd like to shed a light on a pressing issue that affects many Native families in California. And this issue is not just a statistical concern. It has deep historical roots and a profound impact on local indigenous people. Orange County, like most parts of the United States, has a long history of indigenous inhabitants with nearly 5,300 still occupying it today. Unfortunately, even without tribal land, it's also a place where many indigenous victims have gone missing or been victims of violence. As I did my research for this event, I came to the realization there was no real information on the number of victims in Orange County. Not having that data is part of the problem. I know that our numbers are not as high as our sisters to the north, but it's because we're only 1% of the local census data. Are we even being seen? Are the investigators seeing and recording the correlation of these events? This crisis extends far beyond my ancestral land, affecting indigenous communities across the state. And in fact, as you know, Native American women face murder rates that are more than 10 times the normal average in some counties. This alarming statistic speaks volumes about the systemic issues that need to be addressed. Historically, the mistreatment of indigenous people has left scars that continue to affect our communities even today. This means inadequate access to resources have created an environment where indigenous people, but mainly women, are more vulnerable to violence and exploitation. Understanding this historical context is crucial to comprehending the significance. So what can we do to make a difference? We must take action, and that action starts right here in our community. I implore you all to join local search teams dedicated to finding missing people, indigenous people, and supporting their families. These teams work tirelessly to bring attention to the cases that often go unnoticed by mainstream media and law enforcement. The more we are involved as leaders in our community, the more light is shed on these cases. Assemblymember Ramos and the California Native American Caucus, thank you for leading the way with this feather alert to push for mainstream attention. This attention will be crucial in bringing our people back home. By volunteering your time, spreading awareness, advocating for policy changes, you can help address this issue at its core. And we must support initiatives that empower indigenous communities, provide resources for survivors, and hold those responsible for these crimes accountable. Let us honor the indigenous people of this land by taking a stand against this injustice, join local search teams, support indigenous-led initiatives, work with local law enforcement, and be part of the solution. And together we can make a difference and ensure that the voices of the missing and murdered indigenous people are heard and justice is served. Umpalu. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Chairman Rudy Ortega from the Fernandino Tataviatam Band of Mission Indians.
Chairman Ramos, thank you, and Assembly members on the panel as well. Thank you so much for addressing an issue that has been long overdue, as the history is, Assemblymember Ramos mentioned, and through the statistics that the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission has addressed. This issue has been long overdue, and so much has to be done. And I know, Assemblymember, you have a bill to deal with ICWA children as well, which also stems where many missing children has been taken away from our families and homes. And that's been the history of California tribes. As a tribe that is non-federal recognized but acknowledged in the state of California, we serve this issue. Approximately about 4 years ago or 5, I had one of my tribal citizens taken and missing from Northern California in the Fresno area. I contacted Table Mountain Reservation and asked their tribal police to assist us in identifying and finding my tribal citizen that went gone missing. For she was missing for over a month, and we were able to locate her. But had the system been in place, I believe safeguarding, we had her return back home with us. But more so, if this was in place, we would have had a steadfast where the local authorities in Fresno County would assist us even further. So this is why we find the importance of this matter. And I thank you all for taking issue. As Assemblymember Radon had mentioned, these members here are not just discussing it, you're taking action. And that's what we need in the Assembly, in the state of California. Because that's the things that make these things move faster for us as Indian people and be heard from people across. And it's long overdue, as mentioned multiple times. So again, thank you so much for this Bill AB 1314. And I look forward to learning more on how to implement it and educate our tribes all collectively, and especially in Los Angeles, that serve as non-recognized tribes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that testimony. Next, we'll hear from Chairman Anthony Morales from the Gabrieno Band of Mission Indians.
Greetings and welcome to all of you. I want to start out by saying that back in early spring, I did an opening for Democratic Women's Caucus in downtown Los Angeles. And in my opening, I made the request to the audience, because all the ladies that were there were legislators. And we made a request that to acknowledge the issue that was at hand, missing women, murdered Indigenous women. And that was about 5-6 months ago. And I'm of the opinion that what we requested finally became a reality 3-year bill. I think that's what happened. I'm not taking the credit that it was me that did it, but I don't have nothing in writing. I'm speaking from the heart, because that's the way I am. I'm old school, you know. My niece sent me a bunch of stuff here on this phone, and I turned it off, because I'm not going to follow that agenda that she wrote for me. But, my son and I, we did that opening, and we did an honoring song, a healing song, which I want to sing in a few minutes. But I want to go on by saying that I have 6 granddaughters, and they range from the age of 9 to 29. And it would be devastating to me, my wife, and all our family if we were to experience an atrocity of one of my granddaughters going missing, kidnapped, raped, whatever the case may be. But I always, when I'm around them, I always try to educate them. I try to make them aware of their surroundings, always be looking around. As a matter of fact, when my eldest granddaughter started driving, I made sure that I put her on my AAA emergency service so she wouldn't be stranded somewhere. And now my sons have done the same for their daughters. And, when a culture wants to be erased, what do? What does the governing bodies do to continue with that erasure? Well, they attack our women. Our women are the givers of life. And I have a dance group and singing group where we honor our women, because our women are the ones that are the givers of life. And in that dance, our women do different patterns, circles, semicircle weaving, and what they're doing is just creating a pattern of life for their families. I attended the testimony at Sherman Indian School last month, where Secretary Howland was there, and so was Assistant Secretary Brian Newland. And they were addressing the boarding schools. Again, erasure. What did they do? They attacked our kids, our children. They took them to those boarding schools so that they could change them. Well, it's no different with our women. That's what they want to do. It's part of the colonization. It's part of the genocide and atrocities that our women have gone through since the Spanish, Mexican, and American era. So I really ask, commend, whatever, that continue doing such bills like this. I think we need more legislation like this. I think this is the first here in California. I haven't heard of any other states, but I'm hopeful that it continues to other states. I'm hopeful that the federal government will step in. And so that being said, I would like to just close with that healing song in memory of those women, the givers of life. My son, Andrew Guiding Youngclaw, will accompany me.
Thank you so much. Is that, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, just to kind of put in a little bit more mild, you know, when any of our young ladies, young girls, my family bring a boyfriend home to a family dinner or something, if I'm there, I put him to the side and I says, you know what? I says, there's about 40 guys in this family. You got to take it easy with these girls. And one of them told me, huh, you don't even have to worry about that because I'm afraid of her. Anyway, just kind of put some fun into this. I mean, we can't be all serious and everything, but you know, it is a serious matter. You know, our women, they're our lives, and I just hope that this issue gets more attention, and that there's more with law enforcement this year, that we could all be working together as a partnership. One thing that I wanted to close with, though, I know that missing people, or women, or whatever, it takes 3 days. Is that going to be the same case with this? Whenever we get someone that's missing, if we have to wait 3 days to report it?
That's going to be something that's addressed at the next panel.
Okay.
On the implementation component.
Okay, I would just, yeah, because 3 days for someone to be missing. Okay, thank you, James. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairman Morales, for your testimony and for your song and covering us with that. Our next person to speak is Executive Director Keely Litton from the Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indians.
Helka, thank you for having me. I work for, again, I'm from Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indians, and we're located in San Diego County in the east part. And I work for the Strong-Hearted Native Women's Coalition, which was created by Native women. We are the only tribal coalition that is recognized under the Violence Against Women Act in California. And we provide tribal training and education and support to tribal governments on the issues of violence against women. We also advocate at the state and federal level regarding legislation, and so we're oftentimes behind the scenes making comments and providing testimony regarding legislation that might impact our communities, and then more importantly, the survivors and family members in our community. I've been working as an advocate in this field for over 20 years, and so majority of what I've done throughout the years is provide education on tribal communities to law enforcement, to judges, to non-tribal non-tribal domestic violence programs, talking about jurisdiction and the issues that we see and face in our community. And murdered and missing is nothing new, although it's mostly new to a lot of mainstream community. It's a continuum of violence that we see regarding domestic violence and sexual assault, and obviously sex trafficking, and it's a continued issue. So the Feather Alert is an important step to making changes. It does bring a lot more visibility into our community. We've been invisible for far too long, and really trying to push some of the issues that we see when dealing with victimization and seeking justice for our victims in our community. I want to echo a little bit about what Jolie was talking about as the importance of Public Law 280 education and jurisdiction for law enforcement. I'm hoping that the Feather Alert will provide a connection for law enforcement to see our resources that we have in tribal community, making connections for our victims on resources available to the victims and families regarding murdered and missing, but also providing that key education for them to understand. I did training for law enforcement for post the peace officer standing about, it was probably close to 15 years now, for serving, policing and domestic violence and sexual assault in Indian country. And I haven't seen a whole lot of specific training like that since then, which is makes me really sad to know that. And so the importance of that education and training, and the importance for law enforcement to understand the jurisdictional issues. A lot of the reasons that we see high rates of missing and murdered is those jurisdictional issues between the federal law enforcement, state law enforcement, and the lack of support of our tribal law enforcement in our communities and for our tribal governments. The other thing that I really like to point out too, especially for my brothers and sisters in the tribal community that are here today, is the dangers that we see with the lack of relationship with law enforcement when it comes to missing and murdered cases, when there is not that type of relationship, and how cases can be turned around so quickly and work against sometimes our victims. And we have a lot, because murdered and missing has become kind of this, people are jumping on the bandwagon. We've seen some unfortunate programs and persons taking advantage of our community. So it's really important to know that victim services are free services, and that our tribal community should not be charged to seek resources. And that is really important for law enforcement to know those resources and know where they can send families and victims, because we've seen some of our families being taken advantage of and being charged for helping them on a missing and murdered case. And so that's just really unfortunate. So again, we're hoping that, the Feather Alert, we're going to be watching for implementation and making sure it's a tool that we hope that our communities will be able to utilize, that it's, again, an important step. I think, the next steps are seeing AB 44 and AB 273 get passed, and getting those ongoing supports for these kinds of cases are really, really important. And to have not only the relationships with the tribal governments, but also our tribal programs that are in place to service our communities. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your testimony here, but also thank you for the strong-hearted Native Women's Coalition for being a voice in Sacramento when we need testimony at a lot of these hearings. You mentioned AB 44 that deals with CLETs and allowing tribal governments to be able to access that information that hasn't been afforded to the tribal government since Public Law 280 was created, I believe in 1978. But we also identified in hearings, which you've been part of, that a pipeline to missing and murdered indigenous women, indigenous persons, is the foster care system. So AB 273, now named the Luke Madrigal Act, is sitting on the governor's desk for signature. So thank you for your efforts. Next, we're going to hear from Executive Director Elena Nori from the So'o Chenal Sister Project. Help me.
Yes. Thank you for having me. My name is Elena Nori. I'm representing So'o Chenal Sister Project. So'o means grandmother in Hopi. I'm Hopi in Cherokee. And Chenal means paternal grandparents in Navajo or Dene. I really want to start by recognizing how important the work that you are leading is for our community. I've worked in our community about 16 years across local Native community-based organizations, educational settings, and nonprofit settings. The work that I do now is dedicated to mental wellness and education in supporting our families, and this is really instrumental in supporting the reunification of families, but also supporting families in their wellness journey, whether a victim is found or recovering from trauma. And I ask that we implement healing-informed, trauma-informed approaches when working with our Indigenous community and education of law enforcement around our tribal epistemologies. In addition to my working community, I'm also a mother. I have a 4-year-old son, and I'm 4 months pregnant with my first daughter. So when I think about this work and reflect on my own path, I envision a world that's very different, right? Where this epidemic no longer exists. And one of my former students, as I was preparing for this, Aaliyah Toscano, I'm going to try not to get choked up, was a victim of MMIP just 4 years ago of September 2019. She was an amazing individual, a straight-A student, a jingle dress dancer, a singer here in community, a part of our LA Native Skins Fest, and truly had so much promise. The last time I seen her was actually at the One Heart, One Mind, One Spirit conference hosted by San Manuel that summer. And unfortunately, she was a victim of a violent crime. She was in a state-led facility where she was lured out by an acquaintance and later found lifeless, unfortunately. And I want to recognize her mom, who is here behind me here in the second row, Bertha. She's done incredible work with the Department of Justice, really advocating for community, and recently won a case with DCFS and has learned a lot, but that's come by her own omission, right? And I think when we think about this roundtable and what can come of it, it's important that we put our parents, our families at the forefront in thinking of how we're working with and supporting their wellness and the children that are also impacted in the process. So if we could just acknowledge Bertha and all that she's done to make change in representation.
Chicana, born and raised in LA County, and I am the first, and this should be sad, of a federal recognized tribe, a citizen from the Cherokee Nation. My daughter's case was overlooked, 23 police reports, 5 denied restraining orders. I want to thank you, Keely, for supporting me and going to the homicide, recognizing that my daughter wasn't just an individual or adolescent. She was raised with such a dynamic person like Elena, giving their lives to help enable and educate our kids. My daughter was on her road to getting a scholarship, Cynthia, with the Cherokee Nation. I stand among a lot of you that know me personally, know the groundwork that I stand for, and I stand in honor of my daughter, and I dedicate my life for a victim of violent crimes, advocating. And Ramos, I give you the most respect because I needed you when no one listened to me. Now, having denied restraining orders, there was no support with me in the justice system. I went to courts by myself. Denise Escola, the great work that she has done, overseeing workshops where we have to better utilize our children, giving them the voice. We're never ready for this. I never was prepared to say I am a person, a mother of a missing and murdered Indigenous person. They kidnapped my daughter from school. She was a victim of violent crimes with a CD number from Sacramento, and they still overlooked her. There was no care, so you're right. Where was my cry? Who heard me crying? I am Native. I see the symbol, but in the support round, we need more advocates in the courtroom to say, I know how to help you in the jurisdiction area. So always keep in mind, just for a second, if I could take the time, it's not a runaway. It is a missing person, which means that person was in danger. That person needed help. Don't systemize and victimize a Chicana, a non. Let's not talk about races, but don't overlook any story, no matter how this young girl looked. Now, when you talk about persevering, you have a lot of backbone. Thank you, Alana and Keely, for helping me in the homicide. I was actually the first one to overturn, not an overdose. That's what, I came out in the news. Her autopsy came out of the news. Most embarrassing thing, as the first kin of my daughter, said that she died of an overdose. Who drugged her? And I have the support with Jonathan Atami. He's not here, but I'm a part of his campaign. And I believe in Jonathan Atami, what he's doing, because I think we need change in our jurisdiction for our children, because he's the only man who fights for dead children. Can you imagine that in a courtroom? So I'm praying justice for Aaliyah Toscano and for all of our family members, because it's not just on the reservation. I'm the first LA County native, and I came hard for DCFS, because she went into state care because she was sexually violated, and she was kidnapped. She was selfless, And in my lawsuit, it said that she was forced to do drugs. Can you imagine how strong you have to be to? I don't have support. I come from the Cherokee Nation. I am the descendancy of the Trail of Tears. I don't have much blood relation, but the organization that I ran with and that I helped go under Elena. So I just want to take the time, and I did win my lawsuit. I held Los Angeles County, DCFS, and the social worker Jessica Norwood accountable. And some people say, okay, maybe you shouldn't justify names, but you want to know something? That's one victory for many of our children to come. So anybody who's working in an organization, please don't overlook that case. Be very sensitive when prosecuting and in your authority when you're a mandated reporter, because I have a DOJ. I actually got my license from down the street in Los Angeles County Probation Department with a DOJ. I'm not just saying mother, but I want to honor everybody who took the time, and for the two still on the panel, I recognize you because you're still hearing our voice. The empty seats, that matters to me. It's a reflection on character. So for us still standing here, it's because we're hungry, we need change, and thank you for listening. Please, always respect the Gabrielino Tonga tribe that we stand on, all the tribes for my daughter's life. I give my life. And to understand, she was missing and tortured. She died the most horrific way. I cannot identify her body. And I stand. I see a lot of MMIW or MMIP, but I don't see a mother like me, really, in LA County or San Bernardino, like that's going hard. And so now that we can bring change, this is a victory against the county to take all cases, Native cases that are in children's court, take them seriously. Every life matters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
And with that, I do want to know, and speaking as what Bertha brought up around the diversity of our local Native community, here in LA County, we have 327,390 self-identified American Indian Alaska Native community members. And within the county, we have over 200 tribes represented, right? So we have diverse languages, cultures, ceremonies, practices. And the work that I do now is focused on mental wellness and uplifting our cultures to support our health so that we can sustain our cultures. And when we think about this work around the Feather Alert, protecting our women, as Chairman Anthony Morales said, that's about sustaining our cultures and our communities. So with that, I just want to close in recognizing the work that you all are doing and sharing my appreciation. I do have some handouts I will give to Linda, kind of summarizing LA County and then some of the statistics, especially noting that MMIP cases were documented in 42 of California's 58 counties, encompassing nearly 3/4 of the state. So this issue is very prevalent. Unfortunately, the statistics are, just heartbreaking, but I do have that information and a little bit about the work that we do through our nonprofit. We provide direct services for mental health, therapy scholarships, wellness care packages, and then community engagement services for families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we're going to hear from the Soboba Tribal Government Chairman, Isaiah Vivanco. Me and the chairman have known each other for many years. There was those that went missing from his reservation, his tribal government, where we got engaged with the local law enforcement, Riverside County, I believe, and there was a lot of work that was done. So it shows that partnership with law enforcement truly does work. And I think the chairman's going to allude a little bit more to that.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Assemblymember Ramos, and thank you, colleagues of his, for bringing these issues to this table on this forefront. Such an important issue, statewide. But yes, we had a couple of young members go missing, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. But there was some difficulties working with local, I would say, state agencies, in dealing with CHP and trying to get Amber Alerts issued and things of that nature. So there was some difficulties there. But because of our relationship that we had developed with our local law enforcement, I believe those girls were found safe. They were found safely because of that. We had taken many years as a tribe, Soboba, in Riverside County to work with our sheriff, and luckily with the election of Chad Bianco. I don't remember what year, but he has really tried to develop a great relationship with tribes in his county. And I appreciate that. And we've appreciated him from day one. We've showed support. We acknowledged him when those girls were found. And today I'm publicly doing it. I think having now the Feather Alert Roundtable, the Feather Alert initiated, AB 1314 signed into law by the governor is a step. It's the next step, necessary step, when we can get to CHP and say, hey, we have someone missing from our homelands, from our reservation, from urban California as Native Americans, and let's get this thing issued and get these persons found. We know so many times up and down the state, and I've heard stories from Northern California where it may be a little worse than it is down here, and those are going missing from their homelands are not being found. There's disasters. The tribes have initiated natural disasters because of this, or are looking for support of legislators and leaders like you. So I just want to say, thank you, James Ramos, Assemblymember Ramos. We appreciate all the work you are doing in Sacramento and being an advocate for Indian country. There's more to come. I know we're working on AB 44, the CLET system, an important piece of legislation. I think there's even more that can be done. And I know we will work to identify those issues. And with your leadership, I know those will be at the forefront of years to come, trying to get law into place. So on behalf of the Saboba Band of Los Indians, appreciate you having us here tonight. I know there was great conversation from panelists. And just so you guys are aware, September 30th, Saboba is working with Attorney General Ron Bonta, Mary Kiefer, and putting on an MMIP event in Saboba. So that is something that we invite you to. We have local sheriffs from Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, LA County, San Diego County, so on and so forth. It's really a Southern California event. It will be hosted at our event center this Saturday, September 30th from 9 to 6. 9 to 6. So there's going to be a lot of information provided. There's been discussion on, what are the steps if someone goes missing? How do we get these resources? Hopefully those can be answered at that event. So we hope to see you out there. Should be a lot of good discussion, a lot of good panelists and things of that nature. So just appreciate everything that you are doing and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chairman, for that testimony. Any questions from the dais?
I don't have any questions. I just want to acknowledge the courage that some of you took to relieve those experiences, because it's not easy. It's not easy to bring out the pain so that we are aware of the situation, so that we are aware of the pain that you're going through, and for us to do even better to stop this from happening again. I really want to thank you, the panelists, for the information, and those that share their personal experiences and their pain that they're going through still. I also want you to know that personal testimony goes a long way. These are things that we need to hear. These are things that help us make good legislation so that we can put a stop to this issue, so that we can alleviate some of that pain through resources that are available through the state. And again, I'm honored to be working alongside Assemblymember Ramos, and I really look forward to working collaboratively and listening to more legislation ideas so that we can proactively be helpful in providing the resources, state resources, and somehow try to alleviate the pain that some of you are going through. Again, thank you for sharing those painful life experiences. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Carrillo. And thank you to all the panelists being able to share firsthand knowledge of what's going on within our tribal communities here in the state of California and on Indian reservations in the state. Your testimony means a lot, because it's when we had hearings like this that the Feather Alert came out of, and then the CLETS AB 44 came out of. Here, we want to make sure that we are always acknowledging California's first people, the nation's first people, which includes Native Hawaiians, that we can't continue. We have to make sure that their voices are being heard too in all these different areas, because statistics affect all of us. We also heard that breaking down bridges to law enforcement and cultural training, understanding the diversity of languages and cultures in the state of California, and the feeling of being invisible when things start to happen, which comes to victim services, to ensure that is something that's afforded to all those that reside in the state of California. And in our county, it's the district attorney's office that provides that information and that services. So we want to make sure that those that are living within Indian country tribal communities understand that that's also afforded to you by the state of California. Victim services, and we need to make sure that when we talk about moving forward, that we start to include that in our issues, as well as mental health and that wellness. We talk about historical trauma, but because we're dealing with this here in the year 2023, it's ongoing trauma for our people, continuing ongoing trauma that still hasn't been resolved. That's why we're here today. That's why we're having this roundtable moving forward. But also hearing strongly about the voices of families that have gone through these issues, to make sure that we're listening as legislators and as the state of California on that peer-to-peer voice, to ensure that we are addressing the right issues that drastically affects the families when they are going through something of this sort. And hopefully, we're working hard to be more proactive to ensure that families don't have to go through these things. But we want to make sure that that voice is being heard. Those are things that we heard on the dais that we want to move forward on, that we're taking back to the state legislature on any future pieces of legislation or any testimony and hearings that we might have in Sacramento. So I want to thank you all for participating, as now we're going to transition into our second panel. Give them a round of applause. Did you get all the new ones? Thanks for coming. see if we got everybody down. Second panel is titled Law Enforcement, State Attorney General's Office, and Tribal Law Enforcement. And with us from the California Highway Patrol's office is Lieutenant Justin Howlett. We also have from the Attorney General's office, Director Mary Lopez Kiefer, Office of Native American Affairs at the Office of the Attorney General, California Department of Justice. Mary Lopez Kiefer is director. It says right here, repeat it twice. So. We also have with us representing the tribal communities, Tribal Police Chief Greg O'Rourke from the Yurok tribe, one of the largest tribes in the state of California, if not the nation. We also have with us Commander Joe Mendoza from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We also have Sergeant Mike Rodriguez from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff's Homicide Bureau, Missing Persons Unit. We have Sergeant Cesar Mayorga, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, South Los Angeles Station. Sergeant Jeff Walker, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Human Trafficking Task Force. Detective Supervisor Omar Franco, Los Angeles Police Department, Missing Persons Unit, Detective Support and Vice Division. We also have Luis Lopez, Captain, Montebello Police Department. We also have Ryan Rodriguez, Captain, Pomona Police Department, and Fabian Valdez, Chief of Police of San Fernando Police Department. Did I miss anyone? Is there anyone in the audience? Did I miss one? Thank you. Detective, officer from, thank you so much for being here. Anyone else? One of the things that we want to, certainly being a legislator from the 45th Assembly District, and now as chairman of the California Native American Legislative Caucus, which has grown to be one of the largest caucuses in the state legislature, but also chair of Rules Committee and chair of Joint Rules in the Assembly. The relationship with law enforcement is something that needs to continue to evolve in certain areas. On our reservation, currently we have a good relationship with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And our tribal government, when I was tribal chairman, moved forward on a contract with our San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for patrolling and safety on the reservation. However, that is not afforded to the majority, if not all, California Indian communities and tribal communities in our local areas. So I think working on the cultural areas, but also working together side by side with mutual respect is something that continues to move forward and evolve, is certainly from the 45th Assembly District. And when I was county supervisor, working with the different county sheriffs during that time in San Bernardino County and Riverside County, and with the California Highway Patrol and the law enforcement agencies represented here today. We opened up this meeting with our condolences to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for the officer that succumbed to the line of duty. So we deeply appreciate law enforcement and what you do day in and day out. But we also want to make sure that the voices of California's First People and all the nation's First People voice is also being heard. And if there's ways that we could better that relationship, if there's ways that we know that now there's a tool, the Feather Alert, that's implemented through local law enforcement with the California Highway Patrol, we'll go through those areas there, and with the Attorney General, who we continue to work on many issues there in collecting data. classification that's there themselves. So we want to get started because I know, and I want to thank you for taking this evening to be here with us. Our first speaker will be Lieutenant Justin Howlett from the California Highway Patrol, who has 23 years of experience working for the California Highway Patrol. Lieutenant Howlett has worked with the Emergency Notification and Tactical Alert Center for over 10 years and working as a member of the team responsible for California's Missing and Wanted Persons Alert. The Lieutenant Howlett is a contributing guest for Child Abduction Task Force and has taught Missing Persons Alert to allied agencies throughout California. And now, with the passage of AB 1314, Feather Alert has been added to the alert system. Lieutenant?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Assemblymember Ramos, Assemblymember Creo. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm here to just talk to everybody about the Feather Alert and give you an overview of what it is. As I stated, I'm Lieutenant Justin Howlett. I work for the California Highway Patrol. I'm going to give you a whole lot of words here. I work at the Counterterrorism and Threat Awareness Section, Emergency Notification and Tactical Alert Center. That is the section of the California Highway Patrol that is responsible for all of California's alerts, to include Amber Alert, Silver Alert, Blue Alert, Yellow Alert, Endangered Missing Advisory, and now the Feather Alert as well. It was formed in 2002 when the only alert that California had was the Amber Alert. The Emergency Notification and Tactical Alert Center is staffed 24 hours a day by uniformed personnel, so we are there any hour of the day when when somebody goes missing, so that we can launch that alert if it meets the criteria that we're given for any given alert. First of all, let's talk about roles and responsibilities when it comes to all of our alerts, but our Feather Alert as well. There's local law enforcement. Local law enforcement is the one who's responsible to respond to the scene and take that missing persons report and investigate the incident at hand. The media are the ones, when there is an alert, that is going to push out that message, and that's talking about social media and regular media as well. They push out the alert to the public so that the public gets that information and can get eyes and ears looking for the person who's missing. And then there's us, the California Highway Patrol. We connect the dots. That's our job. We do not interfere with local law enforcement, nor do we interfere with the media's job to push out this information. We're just here to connect the information and get it to the most people possible. Who's not on here is everybody in this room, because when that information goes out, it's the eyes and ears out here that are actually finding the missing persons. So when we talk about Feather Alert, there are 5 criteria that have to be met in order for the California Highway Patrol to launch a Feather Alert. The missing person is an indigenous woman or an indigenous person. The investigating law enforcement agency has utilized available local and tribal resources. So that means the local law enforcement agency has to do their due diligence before this alert can be launched. Law enforcement agency determines that the person has gone missing under unexplained or suspicious circumstances. And the law enforcement agency believes that the person is in danger because of age, health, mental or physical disability, environmental or weather conditions, or that the person is in the company of a potentially dangerous person, or that there are other factors indicating the person is in peril. Basically, you just have to be able to articulate that there's some reason that this person's in danger. And lastly, there is information available to the public to assist in the safe recovery of the missing person. That means anything and everything, but really the biggest thing is a picture. We need a picture. That's the best thing we can get. What does an activation look like for a Feather Alert? So when the local law enforcement agency contacts us, we go over the criteria for the alert. If it meets those criteria, we're going to put out a Be on the Lookout broadcast, changeable message signage, social media post, wireless emergency alerts when appropriate, and investigative assistance. I know I went through those fast. That's because I'm going to go into each one individually. Be on the lookout. That means we're going to contact every local law enforcement agency within the area, not just the investigating agency, but every agency in the area that's affected, and put out that information so that law enforcement can get their eyes out there looking for the missing person. changeable message signs. Those are the signs that you see on all of our highways throughout California. They usually have some sort of traffic information on them. When there's an amber alert, feather alert, yellow alert, or blue alert, we are authorized by the state to utilize the changeable message signs. Here's the weird thing about it. These changeable message signs, some often called freeway signs, they're highly regulated at both the state and federal level, which means that even though the state says we can use them, the federal government hasn't said that we can use these for feather alerts yet. That doesn't mean we won't, it just means we have to be very cautious about when we use them. And I don't want to go into too many details, but some changeable message signs are state regulated, some are federally regulated, and some are both. So we just have to be careful about when we utilize these. Social media. So the California Highway Patrol has over 200,000 followers to our CHP Alerts Twitter account, or X account now. That's extremely high for a law enforcement agency, and the reason it's so high is the only thing that we put on that Twitter page are missing persons. Nothing else goes on that page. Facebook, same thing, CHP Alerts. These ones we launched just this year. I actually haven't updated those. We're over 1,000 on Facebook now, and I believe we're at like 600 on Instagram. Again, we just launched those this year. Please follow us on any and all of those platforms. But when a missing persons alert is launched, they go to those social media accounts, and it looks something like this when there's a feather alert. It has the picture of the individual that's missing, along with their information and where they went missing from. And that goes to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. One thing I do want to mention, you don't have to have any of those accounts. We put this out on social media, and we push it out to the public. We have agreements with, technically not all of them, but with Twitter, that any person who goes to the website link that we push out to the media can open that link without having an account. So you don't have to have a Twitter account in order to get that information. We made sure that happened because we know that not everybody out there has Twitter. Not everybody out there has access to it or even wants to have access to it. So we wanted to make sure that everybody who has a smartphone can get that information. Wireless emergency alerts, I'm sure you guys are all aware of them. They're the alerts on your phone that are super loud and wake you up at night. We can utilize those when appropriate for feather alerts. They look something like this. Well, they used to. So how many of you even know what that's trying to tell you? Not much, right? So we're trying to tell the story of a missing person in 90 characters or less on the cell phone when those emergency alerts go out. So we decided that's not good enough. We were the first in the nation. The California Highway Patrol was the first in the nation to change it. So there's nothing there. All it says is silver alert, missing, endangered. But here's the important part. That link right there, if you click it, it goes directly to the flyer. And again, you don't have to have a Twitter account or an X account now. It goes directly to the flyer. So immediately when you get that alert, you can click that link and it goes directly to the information that you need. So no more trying to guess based on 90 characters. You get to click that link and get all the information you need, including a photograph. What can happen when millions of eyes get that information? So an Amber Alert from a couple years ago. This was one of the first alerts we put out when we changed the way that we did this. We had over 9.6 million views on this Amber Alert. It was retweeted over 10,500 times, and the person was located within 34 minutes of us launching that alert. So now, again, with the wireless emergency alert, it is federally regulated, so we cannot utilize it for every missing person. We can only use it for the most extreme circumstances, but we do have the authority to use it in those circumstances, and we do use it when it's possible and when it will help in the location of a missing person. Last thing I want to, well, not last thing. I also want to talk about investigative assistance. When we launch a feather alert, we don't just get on the phone with the agency and do all those things. We also offer investigative assistance. Here's why. Los Angeles County, where we're at right now, has hundreds of persons probably in their missing persons unit, I would guess, throughout LA County and LAPD, probably hundreds of persons. If you go to Northern California and Humboldt, there might be 2 deputies working for the entire county. They don't have the same resources and the same capabilities that LAPD, LASO, Riverside Sheriff's Department, those agencies down here with high populations and large agencies have. So since we serve the entire state, we want to make sure that we serve the entire state as best we can. So when we have some of those smaller agencies, we will offer license plate reader services so that we can help locate any vehicle that's involved in this abduction or this missing persons case. We can utilize vehicle cell signal tracking. I don't know if you guys are aware, but almost every new vehicle that you buy now has a cell phone signal embedded in the vehicle. Through a warrant process, or through an exigent circumstance process, we can get that information and track the vehicle that way. We can also do cell phone pings for missing persons, and we can do social media scrubs for missing persons as well. Again, these are things that many of these agencies sitting up here can do themselves, and we never step on the feet of the agency that has boots on the ground doing their job. That's not our job. Our job is to provide the most assistance we can. But when we have one of those smaller agencies that can't do these type of things, we offer those services to help locate this missing person. So I'll give you an example of what the Highway Patrol can do. So this was the case of an elderly gentleman who went missing during the winter storms this year when we were getting feet upon feet of snow in less than 24 hours. This is the small town of Big Pine, which is out in eastern Sierra Nevadas. This missing person had been gone for over 24 hours, and he was supposed to be heading north, either in the direction of that arrow, which is up 395, or out and up that other smaller state highway. That's all the information that we had. He'd been missing for about 24 hours, and there was about, at the time, there was over 10 feet of snow on the ground in that area. So this missing person was known to be in those areas, so local law enforcement sent out aircraft to look for the person, and they were looking in where they should, in those areas where those arrows are pointed, because that's where they think he's headed. Well, we got this information, and again, it was a smaller law enforcement agency that was working this. So what we were able to do is we were able to contact a vehicle manufacturer and get the cell phone information for the vehicle that he was driving. And we found out that, see that little red dot out there? Over here where I put that red cross, that is where he was at. His vehicle was actually located. They were not ever going to find him because they were searching the wrong area. And it's nothing against law enforcement agency. They were working on the best information they had at the time, but we were able to give them better location information to help find that person. That's how he was found. He was surviving on Gatorade and protein bars at the time, but luckily he had not run out of gas, so he still had heat. But if we hadn't been able to find him, we're not sure he would have been found in time. So really quickly, I'll talk about the other alerts that we have. We also have the Amber Alert, which everybody should know. It's nationally recognized, and it's the first alert that was ever created. Blue alerts are for law enforcement officers that have been injured or killed in the line of duty. Endangered missing advisory is another alert that we just recently got signed into law. It's for missing persons that do not meet the criteria of Amber Alert, because the criteria to launch an Amber Alert are very stringent, and they're meant to be very stringent because it's the absolute worst case scenario that an Amber Alert be launched. And then Silver Alerts are for our elderly population. These are the other alerts that we have for missing persons right now. Obviously, Amber Alert is the largest, and it's the most well-known, and it's federally recognized too. So what I will say is, if you have a missing person that qualifies for a Feather Alert or an Amber Alert, it's going to get launched as an Amber Alert. The reason being is that there are federal resources that we can use that we cannot use for a Feather Alert because it's only recognized by the state of California. Colorado also has a missing Indigenous persons alert, and so does Washington now. But It is not a federally recognized alert, so we cannot use certain resources because they're controlled by the federal government, such as TV interruptions, radio broadcast interruptions. We cannot do those because those are federally regulated and we can't do it. So if it meets the criteria of Amber Alert, we're always going to do an Amber Alert because it makes the most sense and we have the most resources to utilize. There's our Blue Alert, Endangered Missing Advisory, and Silver Alerts. Those are just examples of the flyers that we push out to social media and to the public when those are launched. And then I always like to stress, even if it doesn't meet the criteria for any one of our alerts, and this is for law enforcement, really, call us anyway, please, because a lot of times there's confusion. And I know this is almost 20 years ago, but when the Amber Alert was first launched, the misconception was that we needed a vehicle license plate in order to launch an Amber Alert. That's completely not true. All it says is we need to have information to help locate the victim. So, if in doubt, please call us. We'd rather say, hey, it doesn't meet the criteria, but we can still offer you some assistance than not get contacted when something should have been launched and we could have helped to find the missing person. So last thing I'll talk about when we talk about the Feather Alert, and this is true of our other alerts as well, these are issues and lessons that we've learned along the way. I've been with our missing and wanted persons alert program for over 10 years now, and these are some of the things that I see, and they come up a lot, and they come up for all of our alerts, but definitely as we're launching this Feather Alert, this is something that we're seeing as well with the Feather Alert. So the most important thing that I can tell you guys is provide your local law enforcement agency with as much information as possible. The more information that your local law enforcement agency has, the more likely that they're going to be to have enough information to launch an alert and to contact us to assist with that. Missing, we need to make sure that we have information that indicates that they're actually missing. I'll give an example. A runaway was missing for about 25 days. But she was still in contact with family members, just she didn't want to contact her mom. Well, that's not truly missing as long as she's contacting family members and saying that she's all right. We're not really, it's kind of a gray area, and can we really say that they're in danger either if they're contacting family members and saying that they're all right? They probably are. Now, if there's other information to say that they're not, please, again, give that information to law enforcement so that they know that there is danger to this person. Again, as I just stated, danger is the big thing. All of our alerts require some element of danger, and it has to be something that you can articulate to law enforcement. What I will say is from a law enforcement perspective, we can't launch an alert on a maybe. Well, they might be this, or they might be that, or they might be in danger. We have to have some sort of articulable facts. So please tell your story to law enforcement. Explain why this person is in danger. Hey, they've never been missing before. This is completely unusual for this person. Okay, that's unexplained. That's suspicious. That to me says that they're in danger. So please provide the information. Tell law enforcement the story so that they know what's going on with these individuals, and so that they have the information to contact us and say, yes, this person does meet those criteria that we're talking about, so we can launch one of our alerts. And then lastly, just where they might be. Through lessons learned, we've learned very quickly that launching an alert for the entire state of California is not a good idea. People stop listening, because if I launch a missing persons alert for Los Angeles and the person is actually missing out of Humboldt, well, that's several million people in Los Angeles that are just going to look at that and say, why am I even getting this? And then the next time they get an alert, they might not pay attention because they just got information that they couldn't do anything about. So from our perspective, when we launch these alerts, we launch them regionally to the location where this missing person could be. So when you contact law enforcement, tell them where this missing person could be, especially in a large area like here with many different tribes represented within Los Angeles County. they could be anywhere. So please talk to law enforcement, give them the information that they need so that they know where this alert should be activated. And I just like to end it with a really cute picture. And am I assuming we're going to keep questions till the end, sir? Okay, I will skip past this. I hope I was able to provide you guys with some information, and I hope I was able to help you guys understand the Feather Alert process. And I will send it back to you, sir.
Thank you so much for that presentation on implementation of the Feather Alert. Next, we're going to hear from Director Mary Lopez Kiefer, Office of Native American Affairs at the Office of the Attorney General, California Department of Justice.
Miyayam, Notang Mary Lopez Kiefer, Pi Payam Kawisham, Pi San Luis Rey. Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Lopez Kiefer. I am a member of the San Luis Rey Band of Mission Indians. I want to say thank you so much for having me today, Assemblymember Ramos and Assemblymember Carrillo. I'm going to ask for your permission that I can go ahead and turn around and speak to your audience.
Sure. But you'll no longer be speaking to me.
He's heard it all.
You could come up here if you want. That way you're not.
Oh. All right.
It's probably better.
I wanted him to be my clicker.
2 more minutes? I'm just kidding. No. No, you can sit at if you can.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, I think I want the microphone holder. So as I was introduced with my long title, I work with the Attorney General of California, and I have the honor of implementing another bill by Assemblymember Ramos, Assembly Bill 3099. And I'm going to talk about that, what that is. But before I begin, I can't bend this. I just want to let you know a little bit about me. So I'm a mom of 3. And before I came to the Attorney General's office, I was Assistant District Attorney. I was a prosecutor for the City and County of San Francisco. I prosecuted crimes of domestic violence for about 6 years. And I was the chief legal counsel for my tribe in addition. So I have a very unique experience and perspective that I bring to this role for the Attorney General. I serve as his policy and legal advisor on tribal affairs. So today, I'm actually going to talk to you about AB 1314, the Feather Alert, but I'm also going to talk about what Attorney General Bonta is doing to help improve safety for tribal citizens on and off reservations or Indian land. I think this is how it goes. Okay. So the Office of the Native American Affairs, which is affectionately known as ONA, was actually established in the year 2000. It has 3 major roles at the Attorney General's office. Oh, I don't know what happened to it. I swear I didn't touch it. There we go. As I mentioned before, it serves as an advisor to the Attorney General on important issues for tribal governments and tribal citizens that relate to public health, welfare, and safety. Also serve as tribal liaison for the Department of Justice and federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies, justice agencies in general, district attorneys' offices, Superior Court, tribal courts. And we actually help facilitate intergovernmental agreements between all of those agencies. Oh, this is why I needed Sergeant Walker to help me out. So we've heard a lot about the missing murdered Indigenous persons crisis, and we've heard about what the snapshot looks like for Los Angeles County. You've heard that we have the most diverse and greatest population of American Indians and Alaska Natives for the state of California. But what you might not realize, with the population representing 3.6% of the population, American Indians, Alaska Natives, the highest populated areas are all in Southern California. Los Angeles County being the greatest, Riverside County, San Bernardino, San Diego, Orange County. They're all here. This is the greatest number, and it's the most diverse because there are no federal Indian reservations or rancherias in Los Angeles, in Orange County. So our law enforcement, our resources aren't just limited to our citizens who are on reservations, but it's also in our urban and suburban areas. Another quick snapshot. We have 176 tribes here in California that call California home. 109 are federally recognized, 67 are not federally recognized. There's 103 reservations and rancherias in California that border 34 of our 58 counties. We have the most tribes outside of Alaska. So, as I was mentioning earlier, it's my honor to implement Assembly Bill 3099, authored by Assemblymember Ramos and passed into law in 2020 and funded in 2021. So not only did he pass it, he got it funded. And thank you. So Assembly Bill 3099 actually addressed two major issues, and you've heard a little bit about it tonight. The first, Public Law 280, and for the officers who do not serve counties or serve in counties that serve tribal governments, that the Public Law 280 is a necessary information, and we're working on making sure everyone who goes through post academies learns about Public Law 280. Public Law 280, just so I'm not just letting it hang, it was a law that where the federal government released themselves of criminal jurisdiction on Indian lands, and now the state of California and 5 other states, mandatory states, now have concurrent jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction with tribal governments. So Assembly Bill 3099 mandates or entrusts the Department of Justice to provide technical assistance to law enforcement agencies and tribal governments for consistent implementation of Public Law 280, because it's not being applied the same throughout the state. The other part, which is what we're here about today, is determining the scope of missing murdered Indigenous persons in California, specifically identifying the barriers or obstacles that are being experienced by tribal people when reporting somebody missing, or finding justice for if your loved one was murdered. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing specifically on that front and answer your question about the missing persons. The second law that is really California's response so far, again, authored by Assemblymember Ramos, this time last year in 2022, is the Feather Alert. And we have Lieutenant Hallett just explained to us what the Feather Alert is, but it is also, I want to make sure you know, it's the third of its kind in the nation. Washington State, Colorado, and California each have their own version of an Indigenous Persons Alert System. Attorney General Bonta supported the passage of this law and fully supports all of the efforts being done by our justice partners at California Highway Patrol, as well as Assemblymember Ramos, and all of these implementation meetings and gatherings of community. So I briefly touched about what he's doing, his commitment to improving public safety on and off tribal lands for California's tribal citizens. He has issued what are called information bulletins to his justice partners, explaining or providing clarification on certain areas such as tribal court protection orders and the enforcement of them, as well as trespass on Indian lands. We are also holding regional events called Missing in California Indian Country, and I'll get into that a little bit more on the next slide. But Chairman Vivanco has shared with you that it's next Saturday. We're hoping to not only be able to serve the tribal community members with resources that they may not have known existed, but also provide the public with information, vital information about how to identify human trafficking, more information about victim services and closing the gap, and then also hearing from the elected sheriffs of the region on missing persons investigations. Also, the Attorney General will be present at that event. So I know we are limited on time, so I'm going to quickly go through this. I apologize for the small font, but we're all about efficiency here at the Department of Justice. That was a joke. Don't tell my boss. But so first of all, we're having Missing in California Indian Country regional events. Our first one was actually in Northern California, and it involved 28 tribes of the region. We had, I want to say, I think it was 7 of the 9 elected sheriffs present. We had California Highway Patrol, we had the National Park Services, and then we also had tribal law enforcement at the event. There's 3 main components of these events, and this is what I want to make sure you all hear tonight, because Attorney General Bonta truly is committed to making sure that tribal citizens are aware of all of the resources available to them. These events are making it for an opportunity to report of someone missing, your loved one, whether it be yesterday that they went missing or 50 years ago. If you don't know what happened to them, you can make a police report. And then you can start getting some answers. The second thing, you can actually get an update on an active missing person case, or you can provide information on an active missing persons case, even if it's outside of the jurisdiction. Because our law enforcement partner, our primary law enforcement partner for the event is Riverside County Sheriff's Department, being led by Sheriff Chad Bianco. The third thing is that we are bringing our own forensics scientists to the event so that members of the public can provide a sample of their DNA. With that DNA sample, a profile is created in our missing unidentified persons database. It is not associated with any criminal database. It is only there to bring closure to families so that you can find your unidentified, your missing loved one. Once an identification is made, your DNA profile is destroyed. So those are the 3 main components of every Missing in California Indian Country event. At the Southern California region, being hosted by the Saboba Band of Luiseño Indians, there'll be additional activities. There'll be 3 panels. I briefly discussed those. The first one is Understanding Missing Persons Investigations. That will be hearing directly from the elected sheriffs. The second is how to identify if your loved one is being a victim of human trafficking and what to do. We have the experts of the Southern California region to share with you what they're seeing so that you can learn and know what to do. The third panel is dealing with victim services, and you'll be hearing from state, local, tribal, and nonprofits that provide services for families and victims of crime. So again, that is September 30th. It's this Saturday at the Sabova Casino from 10 to 5 p.m. There will also be a portion of that event dedicated to receiving public testimony from MMIP survivors and families. And from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., there'll be a private area for families to provide private testimony. We have put together an MMIP research team, which is being led by Dr. Blythe George. She's a proud member of the Yurok tribe and an assistant professor at UC Merced. She's also one of the leading indigenous researchers on MMIP. We've developed a tribal community survey for all tribal community members, whether you're from a federally recognized tribe or a non-federally recognized tribe, whether you live on Indian lands or you do not. This survey is for our tribal community so that we can get the information about what they're experiencing. We've also completed a public safety survey of our 34 sheriffs that serve Indian country, as well as the CHP, asking very specific questions regarding Public Law 280 training and tribal relations. We have also been very busy developing Public Law 280 materials, and we are in contract negotiations right now with one of the leading experts in Public Law 280. We've updated our Native American Marcy's Law card, which is the California Victim Rights Bill. On that information card, you'll find resources specifically for tribal citizens, identifying everywhere in the state that there are tribal resources. So if someone from LA County is encountering a victim from the Yurok tribe, they can actually go to our website, click on the northern region, and see that Yurok has a tribal program to be able to assist them with appropriate services. We're also developing a FAQ for Native American tribes and tribal citizens on what happens if you go missing. It's in its final review. I've been talking about it for a year. And in this one, speaking directly to the moms out there. Every question you have, what happens, what should I do if my loved one goes missing? What can I expect? You don't have to wait 24 hours. You don't have to wait 3 days. As soon as you believe they're missing, you can call and make a missing persons report. The FAQ also goes into what is a search party, who can help me make a sign, all of the questions you may have, especially if the individual is an adult, and if they've been found and they don't want to necessarily let you know where they are. It is their right not to do that, but law enforcement will let you know that they're safe. The next things I've mentioned were the information bulletins. Those are specifically regarding trespass on Indian lands and the application of California's Penal Code, tribal court protection orders, the enforcement of them. If a tribal court has issued a protection order, that protection order does not need to be in California's CLETS or in the federal government's databases. And this is from the U.S. Congress, and that information bulletin provides all that information for our justice partners. We're also trying to be extremely responsive to all questions and needs that are brought to our attention through our website, on the Department of Justice's website, the ONA pages. And above all, we are actively engaging with all tribal leadership, all local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and federal law enforcement partners in trying to make sure that we are doing everything we can to improve upon the public safety for our tribal citizens. And that's my contact information. I also have brought business cards in case you want those. The cards have my cell phone number on it. But anyways, if you visit our website, you can go ahead and see all the amazing things that Attorney General Bonta is doing. And we are always open to hearing how we can improve. So thank you very much for having me. And I think I'll go back and sit down.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony on that and bringing the awareness of the Attorney General's Bonta's office forward, and that fact sheet that you creatively created. Yeah, for those to be there and looking for those websites that are there. Next, we're going to hear from Tribal Police Chief Gregor York from the Yurok tribe, the largest membership tribe in the state of California, and being creative on how law enforcement is working on Indian reservations, federal reservations. Some have worked to cross-deputize in the state of California. Some have worked to hire reserve deputies on their areas, reservations. And some still enlist the support of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. But we know that Public Law 280, and if that's a new term to those on the panel, please reach out to our office and we could get you more information on that. Police Chief O'Rourke has testified in front of hearings in Sacramento on this very much needed area of the Feather Alert, but also policing on Indian reservations. So let's now we turn over the dais to him. Lopez Kiefer broke it.
How about now?
Yeah.
Ayakui Nektarmar, Neknau Gregor Rourke, Morik Metwamechak, SC Kapel, SC Nachko. My name is Gregor Rourke, and hello, my family in law enforcement, and also my family out in Indian country as well, too. So I'm a visitor here, so thank you for having me. I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to bring a perspective of tribal law enforcement to this area. I've had the privilege to really endeavor in the policy and legislature aspects up and down the state. And one of the things that I've heard over and over again is a criticism of law enforcement and the lack of involvement or the perceived lack of caring that law enforcement has. And I think one of the issues, especially when I hear it from the Oregon border all the way down to the Mexican border, is I think it's systemic in nature. And that's one of the things that we have to really address. One of the things that I heard, especially at the Not Invisible Commission anymore, is testimony over and over and over again of families of missing people asking, how come my loved one doesn't matter? Well, I think AB 1314 is a direct response to that question, why my loved one doesn't matter. I also think that since its inception, and it's a tool that law enforcement has, but just like every tool that we carry on our belt or our vest, we need to have training with it and we need to have proficiency with it. And the Feather Alert is no different. So we are learning some things about that. And one of the things that I'm seeing is law enforcement is not afraid, but very cautious about delving into tribal affiliation and background, because there really is a sincere fear about profiling on our aspect of it. We need to approach a call, whether it's a missing person, domestic violence, violent crime, with an objective lens to be able to handle and investigate that in an objective manner, to be able to present to the district attorney's office for prosecution. But with 109 federally recognized tribes, and with criteria, especially with Feather Alert, that requires local law enforcement to utilize tribal resources, How can we utilize our tribal resources if we can't identify tribal affiliation from the person that's missing? That is something that is severely lacking, and it's not an issue of law enforcement, it's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. Because of those 109 tribes that are federally recognized in California, let alone the tribes in the rest of the United States where we have tribal members living in the greater Los Angeles County, those tribes have resources that law enforcement can use. But we can't tap or utilize those resources if we don't identify affiliation. And that is one of the first big steps that we have to be able to work on. Now, one of the issues is recently California is currently experiencing the greatest exodus it's ever seen in veteran law enforcement. I might piss some people off, but good. If you don't want to be part of this change and hear the concerns and the emboldened message from communities of color, then you shouldn't be in law enforcement. But the law enforcement sitting at this table are still here. That means they want to be part of that. They want to be part of that change. And the representation that I see from different jurisdictions here tells me that this area has.
Would you like to sit up here at the dais? That way you're not standing and, it seems like Director Lopez Kiefer started that ball rolling.
I see that now.
So we will offer it to the
And
next,
she's also giving me
speaker
directions
also.
to go up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you lost my train of thought. But the jurisdictions present here tells me that in the greater Los Angeles area, law enforcement cares and they want to hear what we as Native people have to offer and have to address and be part of that solution. This is a transformative time in law enforcement. Post-George Floyd has changed the game, and the thing is, we don't know where it's going to end right now. And there are many, many different factions that are involved in trying to direct how law enforcement goes. And the law enforcement that's here wants to be part of that discussion and wants to be part of that change. And so that is the positive thing that I see working right now. And being tribal police, one of the roles that I end up taking upon is being that liaison between my law enforcement community and my Native community. And one of the things that are working on is policy. So it's been mentioned before, 2 different bills that are on the governor's desk. Well, the governor still needs to hear support from that. If you're willing, please send a letter of support to the governor's office to sign those bills. Because what those bills are is they're a building block and allows us as Native people to actually have a voice legislatively, one that we haven't had before. And to be able to move forward as tribal police, to be able to take that greater role, and why that's important. We heard that one of the things that in order for a feather alert to be implemented, there needs to be danger. That needs to be articulated to law enforcement. Native communities have a historic mistrust of law enforcement. So what if that Native community doesn't trust its law enforcement? How are they going to be able to articulate those concerns to an entity that they don't trust? And then that information doesn't get passed up to CHP that's going to regulate and issue out those alerts. Again, it's systemic in nature. And so one of the things that I believe so wholeheartedly in and that I want to be part of this change is to be able to incorporate a true trauma-informed policing approach for law enforcement up and down the state that recognizes the historic trauma and the intergenerational trauma and how those traumas manifest itself within a community and as an individual, so we as law enforcement have a better understanding of how to deal with our community and how to deal with our Native people. And the thing with that, trauma's trauma. Every community of color has experienced it. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing communities of color that feel strengthened, emboldened, empowered to step forward and say and call out injustices, perceived or not. It doesn't matter because perception is reality. But yet, as law enforcement, isn't that what we want? We want our communities to feel safe, emboldened, strengthened, and empowered. But yet we're fighting that. So I will wrap up with, again, thanking the Assemblyman for allowing me to be here as a representative from Tribal Police, because one of the things that I really do believe is right now, Tribal Police can offer a model of policing to communities, or excuse me, to police agencies that really does encapsulate what community policing is. And Native country is small. And I'll give an example of that. We heard family testimony of a woman that was missing down here in LA. That woman's father was Karuk. I know that family. I've danced with that family in ceremony. That's how small our Native community is. I didn't know that that family rep was going to be here, but I know that family. My officers go to that community and patrol because the sheriff's office doesn't have enough deputies to patrol that area. So for us as tribal police, we can take that time and invest in the community and show that as a model to the rest of law enforcement, especially in this time when communities are screaming that cops need more training, cops need to be able to de-escalate. I don't disagree, but there's been no focus to those two different calls. I think that a trauma-informed policing approach and training can answer both of those. It's a training that we need, and it's a manner that we can do to be able to de-escalate that, because we can then treat a community with compassion, but yet still hold them accountable. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I will be making my way down the agenda as time permits. I was going to ask which law enforcement agencies desperately need to speak, but I know then everybody would kind of walk away, right? So we're going to call up until we get to a point. But if someone drastically wants to speak, make sure that I know that, because we do have this until 9 o'clock, but we want to also allow public comment. So our next speaker is Commander Joe Mendoza from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And please follow Mary Lopez Kiefer's lead.
Hello, hello. So good evening. Extremely honored to be here with you tonight. I'm Commander Joe Mendoza, and I'm in charge of all of the detective division bureaus for all of Los Angeles County, which we service over 4,400 square miles, and we have approximately 27 stations, 23 of those which are open 24/7. I'm extremely proud to stand here and be accompanied by some of our partners with the LA County Sheriff's Department, with human trafficking, with our missing persons unit, and also with our reflecting our patrol. One of the things that we did a few years ago, I was a captain of LA County Sheriff's Homicide, and Sergeant Rodriguez had been an investigator for about 15 years, going out and investigating murder cases. At the time, we felt that there was a need to speed up some of these missing persons investigations because of the fact that information is just vital in either one, rescuing a victim, or number two, getting the evidence together before it's destroyed if there were, God forbid, there's going to be a prosecution right down the line. So one of the things that we did was immediately make sure that our protocols were in place, so that any time that any person goes into any sheriff's station, no matter where the missing person is reported from, that they wouldn't be turned away, that they would take the report, then they would file it with the appropriate agency. The first thing we want to do is get that person in the system as a missing person. The other things that we did is we have a big social media presence in LA County. It's about 3 million followers in 4 different platforms, including 300,000 in the media. And so we want to amplify any missing person that is in Los Angeles County to make sure that that's then magnified by retweets and things like that. So information is vital, and that's why I think that the Feather Alert is something that is needed. It's a great tool, and now we're going to be able to engage with CHP to push that message out, once again amplifying it, because that's what we want, is that knowledge for the people to see this out in the public, which can lead us, give us a tip, and give us the break to bring that person back home. So before I pass it on, I want to pass it on to Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez has been investigating murders for, I believe, about 18, 19 years. And I asked him to please go to the missing persons unit because a lot of those missing persons become homicide cases. So he revamped our unit. He did a few things that I think were unprecedented. And then we also have some challenges. And Sergeant Rodriguez also, he is a post instructor. He does run Southern California Homicide School. He's in charge of that. And as part of that school, he has implemented a block especially dedicated to missing persons. So it is at the top of our list to make sure that there's awareness not only from the community's standpoint, but from our investigator standpoint. So I'll pass it on to Sergeant Rodriguez.
Thank you, Commander Mendoza, and thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to get my PowerPoint. No, I'm just joking. In any number of situations, I'm very long-winded, but I know everybody's been very patient. When I had a talk with Commander Mendoza at the time, when he was our unit captain, when I went back to missing persons, I was close to retirement, and I really had no intention of having the passion for this that I did. But I'm going to really quickly share you a personal story. One night, I got a call from a nephew of mine in San Diego that my younger son, they were together, and he was unconscious, and he wasn't breathing, and then the phone went dead, and I couldn't get a hold of either one of them. And in a panic, I'm here in LA County, and I kept calling them. All I knew, my son was in San Diego. That's all I knew. My nephew called me back again. I thought my son was dead. I literally drove on the freeway, not knowing where I was going. I started calling local law enforcement agencies, and I hate to admit it, but sometimes who answers the phone dictates your level of service, which to me is unacceptable. I started calling local hospitals, ambulance companies. Nobody would help me. From the hospitals, I got resistance. Well, HIPAA laws, we can't tell you anything. I didn't even know where my son was. Finally, a doctor got on the phone. He gave me my son's name. I had about 3 seconds where my heart stopped. He said, "Your son is here. He's okay." Just so happens about a year and a half later, I was getting closer to retirement, and Joe had asked me to take over the missing persons unit. And when I went in there, I was astonished because I really hadn't paid much attention to it for the first 15 years at homicide. But because of my personal experience, I said, we are no longer going to do certain things. Somebody mentioned earlier that they thought somebody had to be missing for X amount of days. No, you do not. If somebody you think is gone for 5 minutes, you report that, and a law enforcement agency needs to take that report and take action. I'm going to be very short up here. I know it's running late. The main thing is Beyond the Feather Alert, which is a great, great resource. And Lieutenant Howlett mentioned all those great things. Some cases are not going to qualify for a feather alert, just to be honest with you, okay? But that doesn't mean that quick action, response, and timing, and effort and energy that goes into these is not being implemented. Detective Omar Franco was here from the LAPD. We work together a lot. He bugs me, "Mike, can you take over this case?" I say, "Yes, if you can take over that case." So one hand washes the other. We are probably the two biggest missing persons units in the United States. I believe combined we do about 5,000 adult missing persons a year. Our juveniles are handled by our 27 different station detectives, so we only do adults. And if we have to transition them into a homicide investigation, that's where Sheriff's Homicide in LA is unique. The missing person unit is attached with the Homicide Bureau. So just a couple of things for you folks out there. Information is key. Sometimes people hold back information because they don't want to make their family member, they don't want to make them look bad. We are only as good as our information, okay? This is not that we're not going to be in the judgmental business. I got rid of the whole stigma of somebody's lifestyle being a factor if they're missing. That does not matter. On the Sheriff's Department, in addition to our electronic investigations, which Lieutenant Howland mentioned about social media, pinging phones, believe it or not, we actually have a video canvas team that goes out and assists us on homicides, and now we are using them in missing persons investigation. Their sole job is to go out in neighborhoods and look at ring cameras, go to gas stations, and we've pieced together where people's last known whereabouts are, because timing is crucial, okay? Constant communication with the family is very, very important. It's the most important thing that families have going in their life, okay? I know firsthand. my story had a happy ending. In the last 4.5 years that I've been supervising the homicide unit, we have come across over 24 missing person cases that we were able to identify early on that were homicide cases. Some of these cases where the person was missing out of our jurisdiction ended up in other jurisdictions, San Fernando, Pomona, it could be anywhere. And then we liaison with these agencies and end up working the murder together. So I know we're running out of time because the assemblyman only rented the room out until 9. I don't want him to get stuck with a big bill. My mother's actually watching the live stream, and she probably said, no, you are long-winded. I'll be available afterward to answer any questions. We could talk about this for hours. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's something that I definitely have passion for, and my phone is always available and always on to assist anybody with any questions they may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that vital information that someone doesn't have to be missing for a period of time. Call 911 and get that report moving forward. We've heard from different representatives. We want to make sure that we're offering the Los Angeles Police Department, City Police, opportunity to speak. Detective Supervisor Omar Franco will be our next speaker.
Mike, when am I supposed to follow that? Good evening, everyone. My name is Detective Omar Franco. I'm the supervisor for the Los Angeles Police Department Missing Persons Unit. And I've been supervising the unit for about approximately 3 years. And a lot of my colleagues here covered a lot of main points. The one thing I want to reiterate is, yes, California law says anyone that wants to report anyone missing, that Sheriff's Department, Police Department shall take the police report, no matter the time frame. The minute you, a friend, anyone feels that the person's missing or something's not right, the law enforcement agency is supposed to take the report. There's no such thing as a 24-hour, 48-hour waiting period. Just kind of give you a little background on my unit. So the city of LA, not counting a county, just the city of LA, is about 468 square miles with about 4 million people. My unit is myself and 4 investigators. The city of LA is divided by 4 bureaus, the Valley Bureau, West Bureau, Central Bureau, and South Bureau. So I got one detective for each bureau, meaning they handle about 1,000 cases a year, each one, 4,000 people. So 4,000 people missing a year. We do our best as we can through the resources of CHP, our counterparts with the Sheriff's Department. We partner up. We do our best to locate these individuals. We have a success rate. We have about, doing the math for up until 2022, at the end of 2022, it's about mid-80s, high 80s recovery rate. So I think it's pretty good. The one thing that I'm learning from this conference is, for one, I never realized that the community, Native American community is such large in the city, in the county of LA. So just doing some stats, running my numbers, in the last 3 years I've been keeping stats from 2021 to now, we've had 9 Native Americans reported missing. That seems pretty low to me. And just speaking to Mary and other individuals here, it could be an instance of misidentification or just underreporting. So for example, like Mary gave me her example, being Lopez, me as a police officer not knowing any better would probably classify her as Hispanic. And that's unfortunate. And that's very, a disservice to the Native American community. So what I would like to propose, and me assistance through DOJ, is it comes from the top bottom to us. We are governed, our policies are governed through the state of California, through the Department of Justice, to modify reporting data, not to just list one category to define or list a person, but maybe multiple categories to list. He is Hispanic, but also Native American. Or another example would be just gender. So if I've got an example for that one, but I don't got time for it. But if a person was, born biological male, transitioned to female, we need to be very specific on how we identify that individual, how we list a missing person. Story behind that is we had a missing person investigation. This individual was born male, transitioned to female. When family can report him missing, they listed her as a female Hispanic. So the whole time we were looking for a female Hispanic. 2 months later, we just happened to come across a coroner's office, a male Hispanic John Doe that never got identified. And it was listed as a male because the individual still had male genitalia. So I think it'd be very important to include just somewhere in the context, just very specific information that would assist in these very specific details that would get a much closure and just and recover the individual in a timely manner. Not sure if I have anything else. Again, the Feather Alert, a very great tool. We use a Silver Alert very often. Matter of fact, we use 2 just today in our city. They're very effective. It's a wonderful thing to get, like I said, millions of eyes and ears out there to report the individual, and it does lead to a much faster and safer recovery. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much for that testimony. And even at 9 cases, per capita wise and population wise, is a high rate. I think that's part of the discussion with 700,000 Native Americans identified in LA County, or in the state, and over 363,000 in LA County. Even 9 per capita wise starts to see that it is a larger amount here in this area. So I want to thank you for that. And the data classification is something that we will take back and talk about those areas. Next, we'll have Lucia McKenzie speak.
Thank you very, very much, Assemblyman, for having me here. It's an honor to represent my department and being here in this forum. Again, I want to say my condolences to all my Native American women from our various tribes that have suffered, been victimized, and been just lost in the system. I apologize. We have failed you at times, but we've done our best, and we're improving. We're constantly improving. I have worked for the Department for LAPD for 28 years. I'm going to my 29th year. And in those years, I've worked patrol, I've worked vice, I've worked internet crimes against children, missing children, and worked with HSI, FBI, community relations, detectives, various hats I've worn. And in those different jobs that I've had, different hats I've carried, I see there's a lot of indigenous and Native communities that feel marginalized. And that's not okay with me. That's not okay with our department. And that's why people ask me, when are you going to retire, Lucy? And I said, I'm not going to retire just yet because I still have work to do. And I've worked with the indigenous community in Los Angeles, which I don't know if you know, there's over 200 indigenous languages spoken in LA. And that's not Native American, it's indigenous from Mexico and South American. And I recently did the first Indigenous Community Academy so that we can be a conduit and a line of communication so that our Indigenous community can disseminate that stigma that we're going to just round everybody up and, just send them away. No, I don't want there to be fear. We're not about that. All we care is if you're a victim of a crime, you're a witness of a crime, or, you need victims assistance. There's so many things that we need to exchange, so cultural exchange. So I have worked in the past due to some incidents that happened in our department that escalated and deaths occurred due to not understanding cultures and or languages. So with that, I worked with indigenous leadership so that we can have forums between law enforcement and our indigenous leaders to understand our cultures, understand our beliefs, religious beliefs, our practices, so that we as law enforcement can also respect our community, tribes, indigenous communities, so that we are respectful too, and that we could also exchange resources for our community members, that they understand our culture, our law enforcement culture, and we can understand our community's culture. And so, I have designed this community academy, the first Indigenous Community Academy. You can look at LAPD Transit Services. Instagram, you can see it through about 3 minutes of how that academy went, the graduation. But I was able to collectively get subject matter experts, not just from LAPD, from the Sheriff's Department, from organizations to educate and give resources, education to our community members. And I'm ready to also be a conduit for the Native American community, because we do have to bridge that gap. And I also was the first one to help create a resource for our officers, because our Indigenous community was, they're the perfect victims, because there was a lack of communications. Pequiche, Nawa, Kanghoval, Mayan, Aztec, and they'd come to the police station and they didn't understand what they were saying. So I said, what are we doing about this? So working with the leadership, with the Indigenous leaders, I helped create a card that officers can carry, breaks down about 10 Indigenous languages from Mexico, 9 from South America, so that officers can utilize that. And if it's not an exigent circumstance, they can have time to be able to meet with or call a translator that we developed, not part of the city. I'm hoping before I leave this department, I can be the conduit to connect that makeshift translation unit with our Indigenous leaders into the city language bank. And therefore, that we're helping on bridging that gap, so there's communication. We could do these reports, give them the best service we can. And we can do that with the Native American community, but we have to understand each other. So I'm hoping that we can create more forums. We can network as we did today, so that we can have more Native American community academies, so that all these subject matter experts can be in that academy, be subject matter experts, and have our Native community sit there, ask questions, not be afraid to just say, hey, what about this, what about that, and bring, whether it's homicide, bring bomb squad, bring K9, bring victims advocates, whatever you want. We will design it to your liking so that we can serve you better. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for that, and for the offer to start to establish a Native American presence here. Our next speakers will be Sergeant Cesar Moraga from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and then following him will be Sergeant Jeff Walker from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Check. I'm going to keep mine under 2 minutes, guys. I've been awake since 2:20, been at work since 3:30 this morning. I got to do it again tomorrow. So my quick background, I used to work Lakewood Station, City of Paramount, Hawaiian Gardens, and so forth. I handled multiple missing person reports as a field training, as an officer in the field, and also as a field training officer. Then I moved on to the academy, where I became a drill instructor, a post-certified drill instructor. We have a learning domain, a California Learning Domain 27, which deals with missing persons, and we were able to teach that. I had 17 academy classes, so I influenced a lot of deputy sheriffs and participating agencies that come to our academy. So, and on LD 27, it will probably be a great idea, which is my recommendation, that maybe write somewhere there about the feather alert when it is implemented. So at a level of a recruit, they can start already knowing that this is an option for them later on. Last thing, I just want to walk you real quick of what a deputy sheriff does when you call 911 or flag us down the street and you report somebody missing. Quickly, a deputy sheriff will show up to your house or your location where you last saw your loved one, and will take action right away. That deputy sheriff will summons other partners. First, they'll start from the inside out. So they'll search your house, anywhere where a small baby can hide, a person can hide, and so forth, anywhere from an attic, basement, crawl space, or what have you. And then they'll work their way out. They're going to gain information. Do they have money? Do they have a cell phone? Right? We can pin their cell phone. Do they have means of transportation? Do they know how to take buses or ride a scooter, a bicycle, what have you? Do they have relatives or friends where they visit a lot? Okay. They also will ask you if they have frequent locations where they visit, a park, arcade area, and so forth. And they'll move on. Then they'll summons a supervisor like me, which I have a patrol vehicle for supervisor where I have a dry erase board in the back. I have a digital map, and they start working on grids. They start assigning the other partners to start working on the locations where to search. We'll summons a helicopter so they can orbit the areas. We can get a bloodhound. We can do so much, send pictures via our county cell phones, start talking to detectives, start working the entire system, and gather as much information, trying to get a picture of the missing person, and then we'll start sharing it. And then it goes all the way to the detective level, okay? But we'll be there the entire time once you report it. Any questions? No? Okay. That's all I got. I told you 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for that. And for the alluding to making sure that the Feather Alert is part of the process of the training so that people truly know that there's another tool, an arsenal, a tool to be more proactive to bringing loved ones home. Now we hear from Sergeant Jeff Walker, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Human Trafficking Task Force.
Thank you for having me. Very often, a sizable chunk of our girls that when they go missing, they're recruited or at least approached by a trafficker or a pimp. I heard a stat once about 1 out of every 3 will at least be approached, if not successfully recruited to become a commercial sex worker. So it's great that human trafficking is here at the table here. We have a lot of resources that have been developed within the human trafficking community to be able to find missing girls that have been posted online. There's a couple of databases that have been designed by Ashton Kutcher, believe it or not, and Traffic Jam, which is by Carnegie Mellon. They just scrub the databases of the ads that these girls post pictures, and then they're able to scrape those ads, and then we're able to look at those ads and make a phone call, make a date, go in undercover, and recover them if they have been posted. So it's good that we're part of this conversation. I'm available for any questions. The Human Trafficking Task Force has been around since 2015. We currently have, thank you. We currently have LAXPD, California Highway Patrol, Probation Department, State Parole, the District Attorney's Office, and I think that's about it. And DCFS is right in the office with us. So everybody's together, all on the same roof. We stare at each other in the eye every single day, so nobody can get away from not doing work and stuff like that. So we're all looking at each other. So we work with civilians. We work with our DCFS staff and our service providers, which are Saving Innocence and Zoe International. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Our next speaker who will offer the ability to speak is Captain Luis Lopez from the Montebello Police Department.
Just really quick, it's an honor to be here and be part of this roundtable. I think one of the things that we all got out of it is with the Feather Alert is that when Assemblymember Ramos was giving all the data on the indigenous people and all the missings and the underreported, it's good for us to be able to take back to our organizations and realize that there might be more of a community that we don't even know about, and be a little more cognizant that that could be underreported and to look into that. We work well with everybody here in this room, so if they're missing out of Montebello, you can guarantee you that the Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles Police Department, and all the other agencies here work together. We work with the same databases, the same systems. So it's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to be able to take this information back, the victim statements, and hearing some of the things that we heard. They're very impactful. And rest assured that they didn't go on deaf ears. I know that we all take something back from it, not just as police officers, but also as parents and brothers and sisters. And it's something that we'll take back and make us that much better to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, Ryan Rodriguez, Captain, Pomona Police Department.
Hi, good evening. Just on a personal note, the stories that I heard today were very impactful, like you said. The stat of 84% of Native American women was dropped me to the floor. So, you know, it says up here it's a Feather Alert Roundtable. This is an alert for us in law enforcement on how big this problem is. And one thing I've learned is if there's a problem like this, as long as you have passion and purpose like you all do here, you're going to solve the problem eventually. So I'm very excited to be part of this, and I'm so happy I came. A lot of intelligent, passionate people here that want to change it. I can tell you that law enforcement, we're going to put it on the priority. I'm going to take us back to the Pomona Police Department and make sure that our guys and girls know about it. The Toscano tragedy, I have family in Whittier. I know it's been about 4 years now, in November, if I remember correctly, so thank you. So we're with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much from the Pomona Police Department. Next, we have Fabian Valdez, Chief of the San Fernando Police Department.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Captain Rodriguez said. This tonight was an eye-opener. I'm very proud of the relationship that we have with our Fernandeño Tactavian tribe in the city of San Fernando. We work really well with them, and one of their representatives is here tonight in the audience, and we have regular conversations about how it is that the San Fernando Police Department can better serve the indigenous community in and around San Fernando. So with that, I know the law enforcement partners here tonight are all ears. And again, as Chief of Police, echoing what the Chief said here, we are about serving, and we are at the San Fernando Police Department, I call it customer service. We are going to be the best. And that's the culture that I am permeating in the organization. So if you are not happy with our level of service, you can reach out to me directly, and I will see to it that you are served with dignity and respect like everyone deserves. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and to listen to these very intelligent and wonderful people, and I got my education, so I appreciate that. I feel that much smarter. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And to see law enforcement coming and filling this panel and those hearing about it, making their way here, shows the importance of partnership with local law enforcement and being able to hear from the California Highway Patrol on how the implementation of the Feather Alert gets implemented. And being able then to hear that local law enforcement wants to include it in their training so that local officers do know that it's an arsenal that they have to be able to look at when it comes to Native Americans being abducted, but also it's a tool to make sure they come home safe before we have to look at the homicide aspect of it, which then again, California is number 5th amongst all the states in the nation of unresolved and uninvestigating missing and murdered Indigenous women, Indigenous persons, Native American women, Native American persons here in the state of California. So these types of implementation meetings and the resources from the Attorney General's office are much needed throughout the state of California. And here in this area, LA County, the areas that you represent, has the highest population of Native Americans who reside here, with over 363 from the last census that have identified LA County as home. So when we look at those investigations, and we do identify as Native American, but we know now that classification and data cards should include even more of that so that we could get a true representation of those that are being abducted, so that we make sure that we bring them back home safely. And knowing that the term Public Law 280 has been thrown around here, and if that's something that is new to you, please reach out to the Attorney General's office, reach out to our office, and we could try to provide some training on that so that it becomes part of, again, the training. Public Law 280, Feather Alert, and CLETS is going to be coming our way. It's on the governor's desk. And so we continue to reach out to our communities to ensure that voices are being heard. for many, and even in local law enforcement, truly don't know the impact of the population of Native Americans that reside here in LA County. Even though when you look at the statistics, it still makes up maybe 2, 3, 4% of the area, it still is the largest population here in the state of California per capita wise. And I believe we owe it to California's first people, the nation's first people, to ensure that when something happens to them, that we are using all the tools that are used at the local level and then the CHP, the state level, to ensure that public safety is afforded to all in the state of California. And that includes California's first people and the nation's first people. So I want to thank law enforcement for being here today. And if there's any follow-up that our office could provide, please, by all means, reach out. Any ideas that might come to law enforcement that maybe we're not seeing, that maybe there's some classification, maybe there's some type of further reporting that needs to happen when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to areas where people are missing and show up. Let's make sure that we're working all together on these issues. We do serve as the chair of the California Native American Legislative Caucus, but also chair of the Assembly Rules and Joint Rules. My colleague here serves as the chair of local government, but we all serve the people of the state of California to make sure that everybody has a safe environment. And we do want to thank law enforcement for all those that you protect day in and day out in tribal lands and also in the state of California. So with that, this panel is concluded.